Chapter 1067. Although the raccoon had a baby face and looked very young, she was actually very strong. Raccoon grabbed Lu Lanhua's collar and lifted the unconscious Lu Lanhua up. He then dragged her out of Zhang Meihua's house. The group of people who were still exclaiming about Yun Jian's ferociousness despite being so young and pretty just now widened their eyes. Not only was Yun Jian ferocious, even Yun Jian's subordinate, Tanuki, who looked like a weak makeup artist, was ferocious as well. It was a pity that the people around them did not know that Tanuki was not a makeup artist. The raccoon was an expert in the art of disguise. The art of disguise could completely change a person's appearance into another person. Even the other person's own parents wouldn't be able to recognize them. To be able to turn someone into someone else, her makeup skills must be impeccable. Making someone beautiful was only one of her skills. In the crowd's opinion, a girl who knew how to put on makeup was mostly gentle and weak. Why was Tanuki so ferocious? Tanuki was not only ferocious, she had once killed a bull with a single punch. She was the strongest female warrior in the Kosha mercenaries. Of course, the people around them did not know about this. Tanuki was already dragging the unconscious Lu Lanhua out of the house. The surroundings quieted down as if everything had returned to normal. "Mom, let's go back." Yun Jian took out a napkin from her pocket and tested wiping the butterfly knife a few times. Once she was done wiping the blood off the knife, she closed it nimbly and put it back into her pocket. She then extended her hand to lift Qin Yiru's wedding gown slightly and walked into the house. "Xiao Jian, don't bother with people like that next time." Qin Yiru pulled Yun Jian's hand over and patted the back of Yun Jian's smooth and soft hands with her calluses. Qin Yiru was completely different from the old her. If it was the old Qin Yiru, she would not be advising Yun Jian to ignore Lu Lanhua. Instead, she would be reprimanding Yun Jian for being violent towards an elder. "Amen, Mom." Yun Jian nodded with a grin. If it were not for Lu Lanhua's bloodstains on the floor, the people present would not be able to recognize this young girl who was beaming radiantly. Was this really the same girl who did not hold back when she was being ruthless just now? Yun Jian held Qin Yiru's hand gently as they entered the house. Ce stood quietly beside Yun Jian and followed them in. "Xiao Jian, I'm not saying that you can't go easy on people like that. I'm just worried that you'll do it like this. It's just Lu Lanhua this time. What if something happens to you next time when you meet someone ruthless?" Qin Yiru frowned, her worry for Yun Jian evident between her brows. She was not saying that Yun Jian could not go against people like Lu Lanhua. Instead, she was worried that Yun Jian had really offended some important figure. What should she do if she really offended someone important if she continued to be so high profile? "Xiao Jian, I'm worried about you. I'm afraid that something will happen to you." As Qin Yiru spoke, Yun Jian had already helped her into the house to sit on a round stool on the first floor. Qin Yiru was looking at her worriedly. "Mom, I know. Yun Jian had just said that. She had yet to finish her sentence when she was interrupted. Chapter 1068. Ce's gaze was fixed on Yun Jian when he said that. He was very, very serious. Qin Yiru was initially looking at Yun Jian, but after what Ce said, she turned to look at Ce. Looking at Ce's serious expression, Qin Yiru suddenly felt happy for Yun Jian. It turned out that Qin Yiru was still worried about what would happen in the future when her daughter suddenly became so dominant half a year ago. People in the countryside liked gentle and soft girls, while people in the city, especially those who came from well-to-do families, liked their wives to be the gentle and elegant type. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was domineering. Her techniques and moves were frightening. Under such circumstances, Qin Yiru was glad that Yun Jian would not allow herself to be bullied. However, what should she do when Yun Jian grew up and needed to get married? In today's society, boys liked delicate girls. Moreover, a woman would have to face her in-laws in the future. Which mother-in-law would like a daughter-in-law who was so domineering in front of her? For this reason, Qin Yiru could not help worrying about her daughter's future and whether her daughter could really find a husband in the future. She was worried about whether the man would treat her well when Xiao Jian got married in the future. Now that Qin Yiru knew about it, however, she did not have to worry about it anymore. Everything else aside, Ce valued Yun Jian's life more than his own. Qin Yiru wished she could make Ce marry Xiao Jian right away. If it were not for the fact that she was still young, she would force Yun Jian to marry Ce as soon as possible. She would tie up a good guy like Ce first. If Yun Jian heard what Qin Yiru was thinking now, she would probably wonder if the owner of this body was Qin Yiru's biological daughter. At noon, the groom came to pack the bride's dowry and left. Qin Yiru stayed at home and waited for about 3 hours. It was a superstition passed down by the older generation. Before the wedding, Gu Junjian invited a Taoist priest to calculate the best time for the bride to get married. The time was set at 3:30 in the afternoon. Not a minute less, not a minute more. Today was Monday and school was still in session. Knowing that Qin Yiru was getting married, Lu Fian asked her mother to send some money to Qin Yiru even though she couldn't skip school. Lu Yun's mother also came over to help today. Although Lu Fian couldn't come over herself, she had already done her best. Lu Jingji's mother was grateful to Yun Jian for saving Lu Jingji's father, so when she knew that Qin Yiru was getting married, she woke up early in the morning to help. The group was bustling with activity. At this time, it was 3:30 in the afternoon. It was time to send the bride to the groom's house. Qin Yiru got into Yun Jian's Ferrari sports car and the Civic Cat drove them to Longmen City. As Yun Jian was still underage and did not have a driving license, the Civic Cat drove Qin Yiru all the way. The firecrackers by the roadside went off incessantly. A fiery red Ferrari sports car drove at the front while 19 luxury cars and sports cars followed closely behind. Each of the 20 wedding cars cost a fortune. Usually, wedding cars would be in pairs during weddings. 20 could also be understood as I love you. At this moment, the wedding cars followed closely behind the Ferrari sports car. Following closely behind the Civic Cat were the wedding cars driven by the 4 leaders of an Hun group. From Xinjiang town to Gu Yunjian's house in Longmen City, a red carpet was laid out from the beginning to the end, symbolizing a red wedding that would last forever. 20 cars, with the fiery red Ferrari sports car in the lead, cruised slowly on the red carpet. The firecrackers went on incessantly. This was no doubt the largest wedding in Xinjiang town, Longmen City, Zhe province, and even the entire country. At 3:30 in the afternoon on May 21, 1999, Qin Yiru walked out of Xinjiang town in the most glamorous manner. All the residents of Xinjiang town came to watch her get married. Chapter 1069. Starting from 3:30 p.m., the bustling scene continued until 4:30 p.m. Qin Yiru was sent to Gu Yunjian's house under the protection and bustle of the people around. Sending her from Zhang Meihua's house in Xinjiang town to Gu Yunjian's house was just a formality. After the bride was sent off, she would usually spend the night at the groom's house before going to the hotel at night. Of course, the bride would usually change out of her heavy white wedding gown before going to the hotel. Once Qin Yiru arrived at Gu Yunjian's house and the formality was over, she changed out of her heavy white wedding gown in Gu Yunjian's house and put on a bright red cheongsam that she wore during the wedding banquet. The bright red cheongsam had an ancient charm to it. Qin Yiru's figure was already very slender and cheongsams were usually worn by women who had a rather outstanding figure. The cheongsam, which was neither too big nor too small, fit Qin Yiru just right. Yun Jian did not accompany Qin Yiru to Gu Yunjian's house but went straight to Tranquil Rhythm Hotel instead. Qin Yiru's visit to Gu Yunjian's house was just a formality. After the formality, the main wedding ceremony would be held at Tranquil Rhythm Hotel. The guests would usually arrive at Tranquil Rhythm Hotel and have a meal first before the bride and groom arrived later. It was only after the wedding ceremony that the guests would drink with them. Yun Jian sent the Civet Cat to follow Qin Yiru. After all, Qin Yiru was wearing makeup now and it could fall off at any time. With the Civet Cat following her, she could fix it if necessary. Yun Jian and Ce returned to Longmen City in Adam's sports car while Ce drove. Just as they returned to Longmen City, Ce parked the car in front of Tranquil Rhythm Hotel. Yun Jian opened the car door smoothly and saw 3 figures just as she got out. Qingyu was walking over with Gu Nianji while Yun Yi was beside her. "Behave yourself." Qingyu pinned Gu Nianji down and muttered in a muffled voice, even patting Gu Nianji's restless body. "Fine, fine." Gu Nianji pouted and squirmed a little before falling silent. Gu Nianji had been locked up by Qingyu ever since she failed to assassinate Yun Jian. Rather than being locked up by Qingyu, it was more accurate to say that he had been staying at Qingyu's house to keep her company. Today was Qin Yiru's wedding, so Gu Nianji was brought along by Qingyu to attend the wedding. "Sister Jian." Qingyu called out softly as she stood in front of Yun Jian after suppressing the thrashing Gu Nianji. "Yes." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and glanced at Yun Yi. "Brother." Yun-yi also responded. Then, the few of them walked towards the Clear Rhythm Hotel. Just as they reached the entrance of the hotel, Yun-yi dragged Ce away with a grin. The reason was that there were still some decorations to be done at the wedding venue. Any later and the guests would have arrived. Yun-yi was too busy, so she dragged Ce away. Yun-jian did not know what Yun-yi had whispered to Ce. Since they were far away and she did not have good hearing, she only saw Yun-yi whispering something into Ce's ear before Ce looked at her with a smirk for a few seconds before he left with Yun-yi willingly. Yun-yi dragged Ce to help. Just as Yun-jian was about to step into the hotel, a familiar female voice came from behind. Sister Yunju. Yun-jian did not need to turn around to know who it was. But she still turned sideways. Chapter 1070. Miss Lu was holding her husband with one hand and her son with the other. She stared at Yun-jian expectantly. It was Yun-jian's mother's wedding today and her first time having dinner at a 4-star hotel, so Miss Lu put on makeup and wore her prettiest outfit before she left. Her heart was brimming with joy when she thought about how she would be having dinner at a 4-star hotel like Qingyun Hotel like a rich lady. Peeking in Yun-jian's direction, she saw Qingyu standing beside Yun-jian and Gu Nianji, who was held by the latter. Miss Lu had never seen Qingyu and Gu Nianji before, so she had no idea how they were related to Yun-jian. Therefore, to show her goodwill or to make her presence known to Yun-jian, Miss Lu flashed a rather fake smile and looked at Yun-jian, asking in a pretentious tone, "What's the matter?" "Sister Yunju. Where's Yunju? Why isn't he here?" After a moment of silence, Miss Lu continued to speak to please Yun-jian. "Aha, Yunju is such a sports kid. Where did he run off to play again?" Miss Lu knew that Yun-jian doted on her younger brother, so she said that to match the topic with Yun-jian. It had to be said that Teacher Lu was a very smart person. Of course, Yun-jian did not know that before Miss Lu praised Yun-jian for being a sports kid, Miss Lu did not know that Yun-jian was an advanced special forces soldier. There was once when Xiao Yunju moved a little too much in class and was scolded by Miss Lu for having ADHD. He was even punished to stand outside the classroom. "Xiao Zhu isn't here yet. I have something to do." "Help yourself." Yun-jian turned to look at Miss Lu and said coldly after a pause. Then, she walked into the hotel with Qingyu, who was holding Gu Nianji down. Hey, Yunju Jejia." Miss Lu wanted to say something, but Yun-jian had already entered Tranquil Rhythm Hotel. It was obvious that Yun-jian had no intention of paying attention to her. Teacher Lu stood where she was, and a few passers-by looked at her strangely. This made Teacher Lu very unhappy with Yun-jian. Even after watching Yun-jian walk into Qingyun Hotel, Teacher Lu still stood on the spot and discontentedly ridiculed. "Tisk, isn't he just an advanced special forces soldier? Wasn't it just because he was slightly valued by the military and had some fame now? Do you think you know some big shot? If you have the guts, go and get acquainted with some big shot. Youngsters nowadays are getting more and more arrogant." It was because Yun-jian had already walked into Tranquil Rhythm Hotel and disappeared from their sight that Miss Lu spoke in a menacing tone. "Honey, don't be angry. Why are you fighting over that kind of person? Your health is more important." Teacher Lu's husband comforted Teacher Lu softly. Teacher Lu's husband was the typical kind of weak and incompetent person. He hadn't found a proper job and relied on the school's meager salary to get by. Teacher Lu was living off a woman at home. When Teacher Lu heard this, she felt very comfortable. That's right. Yunju's sister, Yun-jian, was only an advanced special forces soldier. What was so great about her? She didn't know any big shots. Humph. What was there to be proud of in front of her? As she thought about it, Teacher Lu swayed her hips proudly as she held onto her husband and pulled her son into Qingyun Hotel. At 4:30 p.m., most of the guests had just rushed over from their accommodations. Chapter 1071. Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were getting married. Since there were many guests today, Yun-jian had booked the entire place. Qingyun Hotel was a 4-star hotel. It wasn't the biggest, but it definitely wasn't small either. At least the tables and chairs in Qingyun Hotel were enough to accommodate all the big shots from all over the world, including Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's relatives and friends, as well as some villagers who had kindly come to help with Qin Yiru's wedding. Currently, the 3 most important teams in Gu Sha mercenaries were the intelligence team, the assassination team, and the investigation team. Diana, Phantom Flame, and Phantom Lien were sitting at a round table with only bowls and chopsticks on it. The three of them were playing cards together in front of a round table with no dishes served. Ace Bomb. I only have one card left. Ha ha ha, you've lost. Before Yun Jian reached them, she saw the assassination team leader Gue Yen step on the stool without the slightest hint of femininity. She hooked her finger at Dai Annie and Gue Yen. Didn't we agree on 10 million? Hand it over. Gue Yan's smile had an enchanting charm to it. Yun Jian smirked and was about to walk over when Gu Nianji, who was being held down by Qingyu, shouted, "Io, stop pulling my hand, it's so sore. Hey! Get her to loosen it up for me. Loosen it up, I won't kill you. I won't kill you." Gu Nianji's hand was being held down by Qingyu like she was a criminal. Her hand was sore, so she shouted at Yun Jian. Yun Jian turned to look at Gu Nianji when she shouted. Gu Nianji was just grumbling and did not think that Yun Jian would pay attention to her. However, when Yun Jian turned to look at her, Gu Nianji told Yun Jian with sparkling eyes. "Quick! Get her to loosen it up for me. Why don't you just let me go? I'll go back to Yulong mainland. At most, I'll return the notice to the people on the wind cloud list and tell them that I won't kill you. I won't accept this mission. Can you do it? Hee hee, look at how cute I am. Let me go." Gu Nianji pouted and pretended to be pitiful. If people who didn't know the situation saw Gu Nianji like this, they might think she was innocent. "Let you go?" Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and smiled slightly. Under Gu Nianji's expectant gaze, she walked over and gently patted her little face. "Yes, yes, yes." Gu Nianji nodded her head up and down like a little rattle drum. "Let you go? That's impossible, my cute little captive," Yun Jian said with a smile as she gently pinched Gu Nianji's tender cheeks. Not long after he finished speaking, a group of people walked in through the door. Teacher Lu, who had been ignored by Yun Jian, was also with this group of people. Teacher Lu was holding her husband's arm and holding her son's hand. Because Yun Jian had ignored her earlier, Teacher Lu felt that she was a teacher after all. Gu Nianji was just a little kid. What was there to be proud of? Therefore, Teacher Lu walked over directly and didn't intend to bother with Yun Jian. Haha, let's see who's more arrogant. Teacher Lu mixed in with this group of people, but Teacher Lu did not recognize them at all. This group of people was Qin Yiru's fellow villagers who had come from Xinjiang town to attend the wedding. When they saw Yun Jian, they immediately came over to greet her. "Daughter of Yiru's family. You're already here." Haha. Someone came over to greet her. Teacher Lu was disdainful when she saw others trying to curry favor with Yun Jian. On the contrary, Teacher Lu felt that she was much nobler than Yun Jian. She was a teacher of the people. Just as she thought that, she heard another person say to Yun Jian, "Isn't that so? Yiru's daughter is the director of new cruise. Of course, she has to come over to preside over the situation." Haha. Chapter 1072. If New Cruise was not as grand as it was now a few months ago, it was now the trend in Country Z's automobile industry. In 1999, cars had gradually replaced people's walking and motorcycles. Some families who were becoming well-off had even started buying cars. Of course, there were not many who could afford cars in Longmen City. In spite of it, New Cruise's name had spread far and wide. Miss Lu did not know about New Cruise. It was impossible for her not to know about the company. A huge company like New Cruise had become a presence that Miss Lu was fearful of. Therefore, when she heard that Yun Jian was New Cruise's director, Miss Lu let go of her husband and son's hands almost instinctively and jogged toward Yun Jian. After a pause, Miss Lu looked at Yun Jian and stared at Yun Jian in disbelief. "You're New Cruise's director?" Miss Lu used every ounce of energy she had to ask the question that seemed absurd to her but was nonetheless astounding. Yun Zhu's elder sister, Yun Jian, was not only an advanced Special Forces soldier but also New Cruise's director? Her identity as New Cruise's director alone was enough to strike fear into Miss Lu's heart. If Yun Jian really wanted to make a fuss, she could just crook her finger at Miss Lu's school principal and the latter would probably expel her. In the real world, the winner was king while the loser was a bandit. It was an unchanging law. Therefore, when Miss Lu learned that Yun Jian was New Cruise's director, she changed her attitude toward Yun Jian right away. This. Sister Yunju, I didn't expect you to be so capable," Miss Lu said with a fake smile. Yun Jian had already seen through it. She had planned to ignore Miss Lu at the hotel entrance, and when she saw her just now, Miss Lu had pretended to be arrogant to ignore her and give her a hard time. However, when she heard that Yun Jian was New Cruise's director, Miss Lu was stunned and rushed up to Yun Jian to express her goodwill. To be honest, Yun Jian disliked people like Miss Lu very much. However, before Yun Jian could speak to Teacher Lu, another mocking voice was heard. However, this mocking voice was even more ear-piercing than Teacher Lu's. Haha! Could this be the legendary grand wedding? This was a female voice that was even more boastful and arrogant than Teacher Lu's. Or rather, compared to Teacher Lu, this female voice was even more luxurious. It was the kind of noble aura that could only be felt from a real lady. Yun Jian didn't need to turn around to know that the voice belonged to Gu Xian's biological mother, Hua Yun. Gu Xian had already returned to China. He was still at Gu Yunjian's house and planned to come over with his bride, Qin Yiru. Ever since Hua Yun divorced Gu Junjian and got together with Hu Chaochuan, she had been dressing up like a rich lady every day. She was very arrogant. All of this was because Hu Chaochuan had an uncle who was an international big shot. At this moment, Hua Yun was strangely similar to Miss Lu. She was holding her husband, Hu Chaochuan, with one hand and her son, Hu Qixiong, with the other as they walked over. However, compared to Miss Lu, who was a fake rich lady, Hua Yun's every move was more like a real rich lady's. Just as she reached Yun Jian, Hua Yun spoke to Yun Jian impatiently. Tisk, Teske. It's just a 4-star hotel wedding and you've already fallen to such a state. Hua Yun had just finished speaking when she turned to look at Hu Chaochuan in a boastful manner. Chapter 1073. Hua Yun's last line was purely to show off in front of Yun Jian and everyone else. To Hua Yun, showing off in front of Yun Jian was no longer enough to satisfy her competitive spirit. Hua Yun might look like a rich lady on the surface, but she was actually speaking in such a tone and manner. Today, he even asked Hu Chaochuan to invite Hu Chaochuan's uncle, who was a big shot in the international arena, over. Other than showing off to Gu Junjian, Qin Yiru, and Yun Jian, Hua Yun liked to boast in front of others as well. Who did not like to show off their abilities in front of others? Some people would even try their best to show off their abilities even if they did not have any. Hua Yun was such a person. Other than wanting to show off in front of Yun Jian, more importantly, she was surrounded by so many people who were dressed like beggars. In particular, there were a few people who looked like farmers. They were wearing military rubber shoes that they used to work in the fields. The military rubber shoes were stained with mud after they had just worked in the fields. Hua Yun saw it. She did not say it out loud, but she was showing off in another way. She flaunted her wedding to show off in front of everyone. You poor peasants are still working dirty. But what about me? She was a rich lady who was at the pinnacle of the international scene, a phenomenon from a completely different world from them. Therefore, when Hua Yun spoke, she lifted her head smugly and looked at Yun Jian provocatively. Yun Jian did not say anything, but a glint flashed across her eyes. Qing Yu, who stood beside Yun Jian, could not help bursting into laughter when she heard Hua Yun's boastful way of bragging. When Hua Yun said that even the arms tycoons who have dealings with the kosher mercenaries and an Hun group came to our wedding, Qing Yu forced herself not to laugh out loud. What a joke! Did this rich lady not know that Sister Jian was the boss of the kosher mercenaries? Qing Yu's laughter caught the attention of those present. When Qing Yu was done laughing, the corners of her lips twitched, but she did not say anything. What are you laughing at? This was the truth. Not to mention that arms dealer, there were a lot of international bigwigs who came as well. Hu Chaochuan felt embarrassed when he saw Qing Yu's mocking chuckle, so he added smugly, "What's an international hotel? What was an arms tycoon? This is the chairman of New Cruise." Some of the villagers in Xinjiang town did not understand what Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan were saying, so they all sided with Yun Jian and spoke for Yun Jian. He even bragged to Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan that Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise. If the fact that Yun Jian was the director of New Cruise had scared Teacher Lu out of her wits, New Cruise was already the symbol of Zhe province and even the entire country, but it was nothing to Hu Chaochuan. Even if Hu Chaochuan was not doing well in the international arena, it was still a piece of cake for him to compete with New Cruise. Pfft, what New Cruise? What the heck? How can this be compared to my husband's company? You bunch of country bumpkins. Don't you know what international means? Ha ha ha. International, it means the whole world. My husband's company is famous all over the world. Hua Yun hooked her arm around Hu Chaochuan's and declared fiercely. Wow, you guys are amazing. Teacher Lu was a knowledgeable teacher, so of course, she knew what Hua Yun meant. Before Yun Jian could finish, she had already decided to side with Hua Yun without even looking at her. Chapter 1074. Miss Lu was already disgusted by Yun Jian's indifference toward her. She did not plan to be rude to Yun Jian, but after learning that Yun Jian was New Cruise's director, she had to be rude to Yun Jian again. In spite of it, Miss Lu switched sides when she found out that Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan were much more capable than Yun Jian. You guys are amazing. It's an international company. Oh my god. Teacher Lu moved closer to Hua Yun and tried to reach out to touch Hua Yun as she spoke. It was as if she wanted to express her goodwill. Hello. I'm a teacher from an advanced primary school in Longmen City. If it's possible, can we be friends? Miss Lu went up to her shamelessly. However, before his hand could touch Hua Yun's body, Hua Yun glanced at Teacher Lu in disdain. Stay away from me. Country bumpkin. When Miss Lu extended her hand, she felt like she was a rich madam too. She had a feeling that she would become an enviable rich madam as well once she befriended Hua Yun. However, he was stopped by Hua Yun's disdainful voice just as he was about to do so. There was always a type of person in this world who thought she was amazing and would confidently extend her hand to someone who stood at the top of the trend to befriend them. Little did she know that she was as insignificant as an ant in the other person's eyes. In other words, if one had never helped others, what right did others have to befriend a lowly person like them? Miss Lu was such a person. She was confident that Hua Yun would acknowledge her when she extended her hand just now. In spite of it, Hua Yun did not even bother to look her in the eye. After Hua Yun said that to Miss Lu, she turned her gaze to Hu Chaochuan and blew him a kiss of love. She was already in her 40s, but she still spoke to Hu Chaochuan in a coquettish voice. Hubby. Is Uncle not here yet? Uncle went to park the car. He'll be here soon. Baby. Wait a little longer. Don't rush. Hu Chaochuan patted Hua Yun's butt and said wickedly. Just as he finished speaking, everyone saw a strong and sturdy man walk in through the door. This man was probably in his 50s, close to his 60s, but from his appearance, he didn't look old. At most, he looked like he was in his 40s. This was Hu Chaochuan's uncle, Hu Batian. Hu Batian was from Country Z, but he had worked hard overseas. Now, he had made a name for himself and had transferred his nationality to Country M. As soon as Hu Batian walked in, Hu Chaochuan felt his aura change. Although his uncle's company wasn't one of the top 10 international corporations, it could still be considered in the top 20 of international corporations. It was a pity that the global multinational companies only ranked in the top 10. Even so, his uncle Hu Batian was still a very outstanding big shot in the world. Uncle. When Hu Chaochuan saw Hu Batian, he called out confidently. Then, he turned his head and looked at Yun Jian as if she was an ant. He spoke to Yun Jian contemptuously and introduced her to everyone. This is my uncle. My uncle's company is one of the top 20 international corporations in the world. My uncle's company is ranked within the top 20 in the world. Do you understand? Hu Chaochuan was afraid that some of the people present wouldn't understand, so he even emphasized his introduction. That smug look on his face was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know of his uncle's greatness. Only then did Hu Batian stand there arrogantly. Just as he stood there, he suddenly caught a glimpse of 3 figures not far away. Hu Batian's confidence and arrogance disappeared in an instant. Under Hu Chaochuan, Hua Yun, and everyone else's suspicious gaze, Hu Batian walked toward Diani and the other 2 who were playing cards. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and curled her lips slightly. However, Hu Batian was already standing in front of Diani and the other 2. He looked at Diani and the other 2. His eyes filled with disbelief as he stared at Diani and the other 2 who were playing cards to kill time. Uncle, what's wrong with you? Hua Yun pinched Hu Chaochuan. Hu Chaochuan understood and immediately asked Hu Batian with a smile. As soon as the question was asked, their respected uncle, the uncle that they were proud of, Hu Batian, bowed respectfully toward Diani and the other 2. Chapter 1075. When Hu Batian walked over, Diani and the other 2 were still playing cards. They were having a great time. Boom boom boom. I've finally won this round. Ha ha ha, give it to me. Annie knocked on the table and extended her hand to Gui Yen and Gui Lian cheerfully. "Oh no, you took back the 10 million I just won. I don't accept this," Gui Yen said carelessly. With that, Gui Yen winked with a smile. She then turned to Gui Lian and said proudly, "But at least I didn't lose anything. I won 10 million from you just now. Haha." The three of them were having a great time playing cards, but they blatantly ignored Hubatian. It was not as simple as ignoring them. Hubatian even walked up to them and bowed respectfully, speaking to them in a respectful tone. However, Annie and the other two did not even bother to look at Hubatian. Hubatian was like a lump of air. He was blatantly ignored. Not far away, the crowd felt their hearts clench. Especially those who were shocked by Hu Chaochuan's bragging about his uncle Hubatian's aura. Hu Chaochuan said that his uncle Hubatian's company was among the top 20 in the world. What kind of concept was that? If New Cruise was already one of the top companies in Jia province and had a global presence, then Hubatian's company was an internationally renowned existence. The two of them could not be compared at all. Meanwhile, someone like Hubatian was not someone the crowd could meet even if they wanted to. Therefore, when Hubatian, who everyone thought to be extremely powerful to the point where he was unrivaled, actually waved his hand respectfully in front of Annie and the other two, he did not receive any response from the three of them at all. Everyone present was stunned and terrified. A big shot like Hubatian should have people passing him cigarettes wherever he went. However, in front of Annie and the other two, not only did they ignore Hubatian, they even blatantly ignored him. Could it be that the three of them were even more powerful than Hubatian? The crowd could not figure it out. Ms. Lu's family and the villagers from Xinjiang town might not know what the kosher mercenaries were. However, Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan knew very well what kind of status the kosher mercenaries had in the world. Therefore, when they heard their uncle Hubatian's words, Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan were so shocked that their faces turned pale. Why were the kosher mercenaries here? Uncle, why is the boss of the kosher mercenaries here? Hu Chaochuan's expression was terrible. He leaned closer to Hubatian and asked softly. However, before Hu Chaochuan could finish his question, Hubatian shot him a glare, indicating for him to keep his mouth shut. Then, Hubatian took a step closer to Annie and the others. Hubatian's signature smile appeared once more as he took a step closer to Diana and the others. Then he respectfully asked, "What brings the three of you to a small place like this today?" This respectful greeting still did not receive a response. Diani and the other two continued to play cards when they were needed. When the crowd saw this from afar, they had a feeling that the three of them had a powerful background. Chapter 1076. As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, everyone present widened their eyes and looked at her. Especially Hua Yun, Hu Chaochuan, and Hubatian. The three of them knew the identities of Diana and the other two. They were the three team leaders of the Kosha Mercenaries executive team. To put it bluntly, the three teams under Diana and the other two were the symbol of the Kosha Mercenaries. Although Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard had a higher status than Diana and the other two in the international arena, that was not the case. In fact, Diana and the other two were only less famous than Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard. In terms of the forces they controlled, they each had their own merits. Of course, Diana and the other two were also part of the upper echelon of the Kosha mercenaries. Other than Hua Yun, Hu Chaochuan, and Hubatian, the others might not have even heard of the Kosha mercenaries. However, from Hubatian's reaction, they could tell that Diana and the other two were not simple people. And now, Diana and the other two, whom they all thought were not simple people, were actually being ordered around by Yun Jian? No, more accurately, it should be Yun Jian ordering Diana and the other two? Are you crazy? Do you know who they are? How dare you speak to them like that? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. Hua Yun was so frightened that she almost knelt on the ground. Yun Jian actually dared to order Diana and the other two? They were the three team leaders of the Kosha Mercenaries executive team. Although she did not know why these three super important people were here, Hua Yun was terrified. In spite of it, Hua Yun was scared out of her wits because she was afraid that Yun Jian would infuriate the three important figures by speaking to them in such a tone. If that happened, it would be Yun Jian who caused everyone here to die. This was the fate of those who angered the Kosha mercenaries. Hua Yun lowered her voice so that Diana and the other two could not hear her and spoke to Yun Jian in a low voice. After Yun Jian finished speaking, Hu Chaochuan also spoke in a threatening tone to Yun Jian. You better watch your tone. How dare you speak to the kosher mercenaries in such a tone, you? Hu Chaochuan had just whispered these words to Yun Jian, but before he could finish his threat, Lin Yiqian heard his voice. Keep it, keep it, keep it. Which one of you started this? How dare you play cards so leisurely in this place? Sister Jian has spoken. What are you waiting for? Before Hu Chaochuan could finish his sentence, Diana threw her half-finished cards on the table and snatched the cards from Ghost Flame in Ghost Flame's hands, speaking as she continued to play. I wasn't the one who started it. It definitely wasn't me. Gue Yan and Gue Lian spoke at the same time. As soon as they finished speaking, they looked at each other and stood up with a whoosh. They rushed towards where they needed help. It was as if they were trying to atone for their mistake. Hu Chaochuan was about to point out Yun Jian when he was halfway through his sentence. When everyone saw this shocking scene, they were all dumbfounded. Diana stood up as well and turned to Yun Jian with a smile. Sister Jian, I'll go too. As soon as he finished speaking, Diana also chased after Gue Yan and Gue Lian to help. It was as if she was afraid of being scolded by Yun Jian again. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yun Jian merely raised a brow. The trio did not even bother with Hu Batian, the director of one of the top 20 multinational companies in the world. They did not even bother to look them in the eye. Why were they so afraid of Yun Jian, though? Everyone frowned in confusion, not knowing what to do. Chapter 1077. It was only when Diane and her friends disappeared from their sight that the crowd snapped back to reality. Miss Lu held her son with one hand and her husband with the other. Judging from her expression, she was still at a loss. What was kosher mercenaries? Miss Lu and the rest of them were clueless about the situation. In spite of it, it was not hard to tell from the trio's reaction that the kosher mercenaries were an impressive existence. Miss Lu might be able to understand the meaning of mercenary group. However, the people standing around were farmers from Xinjiang town. Some of them had not even gone to school. How would they know the meaning of mercenary group? While everyone was still wondering why Diane and her friends had addressed Yun Jian as Sister Jian, the trio's faces had turned pale. Hu Batian and his friends were pale with fright. You know them? They were so obedient to her just now. Hua Yun's eyes widened in fear as she watched the scene before her. She was shaking from the shock. Who? Yun Jian turned away nonchalantly with a smile, asking despite knowing the answer. They, them. The three team leaders of the Kosher Mercenaries Executive Department. Hua Yun's heart nearly leaped out of her chest. Yun Jian chuckled softly and ignored Hua Yun and her friends as she walked into Tranquil Rhythm Hotel. Seeing this, Hua Yun could not help but gulp down a mouthful of air. Hubby, what should we do? She can't really. Hua Yun was afraid. Yun Jian actually knew the Kosher mercenaries. Even if Yun Jian had ordered the Kosher mercenaries around like what she did just now, Hua Yun did not think that Yun Jian was someone impressive. How could Yun Jian be someone impressive at her age? Panic. What's there to be afraid of? She's just a young girl. Can she go to heaven? Hu Chaochuan was scared as well, but he bellowed at his wife, Hua Yun, in a furious tone. Hu Chaochuan had come to the banquet today with his uncle, Hu Batian, with the intention of bringing his uncle here to show off. Within the top 20 international companies. With such achievements, not to mention being at the level of a super big boss in the world, even in Z country, people would fight to get close to such an existence. Coming to Zhe province's Longmen city with Hu Baishan's status, he could be considered as someone who could do whatever he wanted. However, he did not expect that the three team leaders of the Kosher mercenaries would appear out of nowhere. Although Hu Chaochuan was also panicking, he still forced himself to pretend that he could keep his cool and scolded Hua Yun. Don't panic, Hu Batian said with a frown as he waited for Yun Jian to walk away. Yun Jian walked far away, but Teacher Lu and her family were still standing at the entrance in a daze. Hu Baishan's sinister voice carried a hint of ruthlessness, but at this moment he said, Don't panic. She's just a kid in her teens. As long as you have the money, you can easily invite the Kosher mercenaries. Hu Baishan's words calmed Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan's fear. If Yun Jian could really order Diane and the other two like she did just now, Her position in the kosher mercenaries would definitely be higher than theirs. However, how old was she? How capable was she? Uncle, you mean? Xueqi raised his rat-like eyebrows. That's right. I'm guessing that the 3 team leaders of Gu Sha Mercenaries Executive Department were hired by her. Xueqi analyzed logically. He was silent for 2 seconds as he spoke before continuing. Chapter 1078. Here, Hu Baishan's words were like an imperial edict. Especially to Hu Chaochuan, it was all thanks to his uncle Hu Baishan's nurturing that Hu Chaochuan was able to achieve his current status. Therefore, to Hu Chaochuan, whatever Hu Batian analyzed must be correct. He did not even have the slightest suspicion. To put it nicely, Hu Chaochuan trusted his uncle, Hu Batian, quite a lot. However, to put it crudely, Hu Chaochuan was brainless. He believed everything his uncle Hu Batian said without the slightest doubt. Uncle. That must be it. I was wondering why the leaders of the 3 executive departments of kosher mercenaries would listen to that kid so much. So this is the reason. Hu Chaochuan nodded confidently. Kosher mercenaries was a mercenary group. Mercenaries meant that if you paid them to do something, they would accept the mission, be it murder, investigation, counter-investigation, or assassination, as long as the amount was met. When they found out that Yun Jian was the director of a rather reputable company in Longmen City called New Cruise or something, Hu Chaochuan and Hu Batian were both stunned. Knowing this, Hu Chaochuan and Hu Batian both thought in unison. Yun Jian must be something to be able to run New Cruise at such a young age. Of course, owning New Cruise meant that Yun Jian's income must be substantial as well. With a substantial income, it was not difficult for her to pay to invite the 3 executive department leaders of kosher mercenaries to suppress the crowd during Qin Yiru's wedding today. Of course, if Yun Jian really did spend the money to invite the 3 of them, Hu Batian would know the identities of the 3 executive department leaders of kosher mercenaries. They could put on this show with Yun Jian. However, they would not help her with more tasks or other trivial matters. This was the kosher mercenaries' rule. That was why Hu Batian said, as long as we don't provoke them directly, everything will be fine. As long as they didn't directly provoke the kosher mercenaries' 3 executive team leaders, even if they beat and scolded Yun Jian, the kosher mercenaries' 3 executive team leaders wouldn't do anything. Uncle, I got it. Hu Chaochuan said to Hu Batian as he held his wife's hand. All right, let's go in then. Hu Batian naturally assumed that the appearance of the 3 executive department leaders of the kosher mercenaries was the reason. So, he led Hua Yun and Hu Chaochuan into the hall. Inside the Clear Rhythm Hotel, the guests were gradually entering through the main entrance. Of course, those who came were Qin Yiru or Gu Yunjian's relatives and friends. As for the international bigwigs that Yun Jian had invited, they had yet to appear. Yun Jian kept an eye on Diane and her friends throughout the process as they helped Yun Yi. It had been a long time since Diane and the other 2 had done such hard work. They had to set up the wedding ribbons in the middle of the wedding ceremony, as well as place the wedding candies that the guests would take away after they finished their dinner on the seats. Diane and her friends might be good at other things, but they had never done this kind of work in their entire lives. Sister Jen, you're making the 3 of us fly all the way here to do this? Diane picked up a wedding ribbon and looked at Yun Jian, who was not far away, helplessly. Cut the crap and do more work. You guys can have dinner earlier. Yun Jian crossed her arms in front of her chest with a grin. It was then that a group of well-dressed people came through the door. Judging from their aura, it was completely different from Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's relatives and friends. The entrance of these people felt like they had walked into an international upper-class banquet. Chapter 1079. From the moment he appeared until now, Hu Batian had the aura of a successful businessman. Even when he saw the 3 executive team leaders of the kosher mercenaries, Hu Batian did not completely lose his composure. Although Hu Batian was scared witless at that time, he didn't show it completely on his face. Although his actions and words were respectful to Diane and the other 2, Hu Baishan's aura was indescribable until now. However, just a moment ago, a group of well-dressed people rushed in from the entrance. When Hu Batian turned to look at them, he happened to see them enter. He was so scared that he trembled and stood up immediately. When he stood up, because he was too emotional, Hu Batian accidentally knocked over the stool he was sitting on. He had always maintained a dignified posture, but now, he seemed to have lost a few points. Hu Batian almost fell, but fortunately, Hu Chaochuan beside him quickly held him up. "Uncle, what's wrong?" Hu Chaochuan just asked this question. Hu Batian had already stood up and walked towards the group of people who were dressed elegantly. "Uncle, you..." Hu Chaochuan stood up suspiciously, and at the same time, he followed Hu Batian's footsteps in shock. "Honey, where are you going?" Hua Yun had already peeled a longan on the table and was about to give it to her son, but when she saw Hu Chaochuan following, she grabbed her son's hand and chased after him. "Mom, I want longan," sob sob sob. Hu Qixiang saw Hua Yun put the longan he was about to eat on the table, and his hand was grabbed by Hua Yun as she chased after him. Seeing that the longan was getting further and further away from him, Hu Qixiang almost cried like a weak girl. At this time, the person who was surrounded by a group of international bigwigs was the demon woman that he had just met not long ago. The demon woman was the CEO of one of the top 10 multinational companies in the world, and now many people knew that the demon woman was the person in charge of the Rongyao company. As for the chairman of the Rongyao company, she never showed up. It could be said that the demon woman could make her own decisions about the Rongyao company, as long as it was not related to the company's survival. Therefore, many people in the underworld flattered the demoness. Rongyao company was not only one of the top 10 multinational companies in the world, but it was also one of the top 5 multinational companies in the world. Now, Rongyao company was about to surpass the top 3 and become one of the top 10 multinational companies in the world. Let's not talk about whether a nobody like Hu Batian had the qualifications to stand next to the demoness. With Hu Batian's performance, he could be considered to be in the top 20. However, the top 20 and the top 5 were not on the same level at all. For example, if a company wanted to enter the top 20 in the world, it would need $10 billion in total assets. Then, if it wanted to enter the top 5, its total assets would need to be 100 times more than $10 billion. In other words, the higher one went, the more difficult it would be to surpass the one in front. The total assets required were also increasing. Therefore, in front of Rongyao company, Hu Batian's company could disappear from the international scene forever with just a flick of her finger. Therefore, when Hu Batian saw the demon woman being escorted in through the entrance, one could imagine how excited he was at this time. He did not even think about why the demon woman would appear at Qin Yiru's wedding. "You! Why are you here?" Hu Batian trembled. Chapter 1080. Before Hu Batian could finish his greeting, he was about to shake a luring demon's hand. It was then that a handsome man dashed through the entrance of Tranquil Rhythm Hotel. The man pushed aside the people around him and slapped away Hu Batian's hand that was about to shake a luring demon's hand. "Don't touch my alluring demon, old man." Mare's handsome face appeared before everyone's eyes. Alluring demon heaved a deep sigh when she saw Mare, who appeared out of nowhere and held her forehead. Why was this man still haunting her? He had chased her all the way from Country M to Country Z's Longmen City. Was he done yet? When she was at Rongyao company, Mare had been coming to her Rongyao company all day long. Alluring demon felt a terrible headache coming on. Hu Batian's hand was slapped away by an unfamiliar man as he was about to shake the demoness hand. His eyes flashed with malice as he raised his head and met Mare's gaze. You. Hu Batian was still wondering who it was that dared to slap his hand away when he saw Mare's handsome face clearly. Mare! Huggy Company's CEO, Mare. Hu Batian suppressed his heart that was about to jump out of his chest. He was so scared that he almost had dementia. Mare was Huggy Company's CEO. What kind of existence was Huggy Company? Due to its long history, Huggy Company seemed to be even better than Rongyao Company. Today, even Huggy Company's CEO was here? Moreover, looking closely at the group of bosses following Alluring Demon, each one of them was someone who was dozens of times more powerful than Hu Batian himself. There were at least a dozen of them here. Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun, who followed behind, were confused. "Uncle, what's wrong? Who are they?" Hu Chaochuan asked. "Uncle, could it be that these people are the reinforcements you've called?" Hua Yun did not know where her confidence came from. She was overjoyed, thinking that these people were Hu Batian's reinforcements. As soon as Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun finished their stupid words, Hu Batian resisted the urge to slap these two idiots to death. He roared at Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun in a muffled tone. "Shut up, you two!" Teacher Lu, who was sitting at a table not far away, was dumbfounded. These people, all of them were wearing expensive clothes. At this moment, Teacher Lu suddenly saw Yun Jian walking over. Hu Batian and the other two were walking in the same direction as Yun Jian, so they didn't notice Yun Jian walking over. It was only when Hu Batian saw the enchantress greeting Yun Jian respectfully that he realized that Yun Jian was already standing not far behind him. At this moment, Yun Jian bypassed Hu Batian and stood in front of the demonic woman. Yun Jian nodded her head gently when she heard the demoness calling out to her. Yes. The international bigwigs who stood beside Alluring Witch stared at Yun Jian in shock. This young lady could actually make Enchantress, the CEO of Rongyao Company, call her sister? Hu Batian was completely dumbfounded. Uncle, what's going on? Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun were getting more and more confused. At the same time, they had a bad feeling about this. Hu Batian was about to go crazy. If Yun Jian might have hired the 3 executive department leaders of kosher mercenaries to back her up in the beginning, what was going on now? Enchantress was the real CEO of Rongyao Company. Why was she calling Yun Jian Sister Jian? Just as Hu Batian thought about it, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. One of the bosses standing beside Enchantress suddenly pointed at one of the 4 slender silhouettes that walked in and exclaimed, Isn't that one of the 4 leaders of an Hun group, Xueqi? Xueqi frequented major events, so it was easy to recognize him. Just as the boss spoke, one of the bosses who held a relatively high position continued with a trembling voice under everyone's gaze. It's not just Xueqi. No, not just Xueqi. If I'm not wrong, the 4 of them are the 4 leaders of an Hun. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. All the bosses widened their eyes, their faces pale from the shock. The 4 leaders of an Hun group each had their own responsibilities in the organization and rarely appeared together. Chapter 1081. At this moment, the 4 figures had already walked in side by side from the main entrance. Adam's injuries had completely healed and he no longer needed Lan Su's support. Lan Su had spent more time with Qin Yiru, so he was still by Qin Yiru's side to provide support and had not arrived yet. The 4 leaders of the an Hun organization. Compared to the group of big shots around him, Hu Batian's heart was filled with a sense of horror, as if 10,000 horses were galloping past him. Why? How could it be? The 4 leaders of the an Hun organization were all here to attend Qin Yiru's wedding? The an Hun organization was an existence that stood shoulder to shoulder with the kosher mercenaries. And the 4 leaders of the an Hun organization represented the entire an Hun organization. As for the legendary leader of the an Hun organization, he was even more mysterious. Just as Hu Batian was in a daze, Ce helped Yun Yi hang the last wedding ribbon with his height advantage. He then casually walked over with his hands in his pockets. With Ce's help, as well as Dian Yi and the other 2 girls who Yun Jian had chased over to help, Yun Yi was able to set up the wedding venue in no time. At this moment, Ce was already walking towards Yun Jian. His handsome face slowly appeared in front of all the bosses. Ce's appearance in front of all the bosses did not cause any commotion. This was because his identity had never been exposed in front of all the bosses. Yun Jian and Demonis were standing face to face. Hu Batian was standing half a meter behind Yun Jian. The group of bosses watched as the 185 tall handsome young man walked over from afar and stopped not far away from the crowd. Ce's aura was very strong. It was so strong that everyone present could not ignore him. Which family was this young man from? Even in the face of so many international bosses and global business elites, his aura was not inferior at all. However, just as everyone present was thinking this, they saw Ce walk over. He saw Hu Batian standing half a meter behind Yun Jian. He successfully blocked himself and walked directly behind Yun Jian. Ce frowned slightly. His furrowed brows indicated that he was in a very bad mood. The leader of the an Hun organization was unhappy. This was a sign. Xueqi and the other 3 who walked in through the entrance felt their hearts clench when they met Ce's gaze. As expected, Ce frowned and walked straight towards them. However, when Hu Batian blocked him from approaching Yun Jian, he did something terrifying. He reached out his left hand and grabbed the collar of Hu Batian's back. Hu Batian, who did not even notice, was rudely thrown to the side. This way, he was able to reach Yun Jian without any obstructions. Then, he reached out his right hand and stood on Yun Jian's left. He grabbed Yun Jian's slender waist and declared his sovereignty. The group of bosses was stunned. Hu Batian was someone with some status. How could this young man be so fierce? On the other hand, Hu Batian lost his balance after being thrown out and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Hu Chaochuan saw this and did not immediately help him up. When he saw the uncle he admired the most fall to the ground, he turned and shouted at Ce. Who do you think you are? Do you know who my uncle is? How dare you treat my uncle like this? I will make your life a living hell. He did not even finish the word, die. Chapter 1082. This young master could be said to have suddenly entered the ears of everyone present. The appearance of the 4 leaders of the kosher mercenaries here was already something that everyone present thought was inconceivable. But that was not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization actually called a young boy young master? Let's not talk about the meaning of this young master. It was rumored that the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization only listened to one person. Other than that, no one else in the entire world could defend their attitude towards others. But today, why would the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization, why would they call this young boy young master? All the big shots present were stupefied at the same time. As for Hu Chaochuan, who had pointed out that Ce was nothing, he was completely stunned. How could he not know what kind of people the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization were? They were the leaders of the Enhun organization. It could be said that even Dai Annie and the other 2 couldn't be compared to these 4 people. Not only did the 4 of them appear here at the same time, but more importantly, they called Ce, the young boy who had just pushed his uncle down, as young master? What did this mean? Not only were the leaders in front of him, Hu Chaochuan, Hu Batian, and Hua Yun stunned. Even demonic woman and mare were stunned. Although Miss Lu, who was not far away, did not know what was going on, as long as she was not an idiot, she could tell. The group of big shots standing there just now were all internationally renowned existences. How powerful were they? Even Hu Batian, who was one of the top 20 multinational companies in the world, had to look up to them and flatter them. But when they saw Xueqi and the other 3 appear, this group of leaders who even Hu Batian had to look up to were like mice who had seen a tiger. They were all extremely respectful. But why would Xueqi and the other 3, whom even these leaders had to be respectful, use the same respectful tone and call Ce young master? It was obvious that Ce's identity was not ordinary. Teacher Lu's group was also dumbfounded. At this moment, Xueqi and the other 3 turned to look at Yun Jian after shouting at Ce. At the same time, the 4 of them respectfully called out to Yun Jian, "Young madam." The way he addressed her as young madam made everyone envious. Whether it was Ce's looks, height, or his loving eyes for Yun Jian, he was deeply attractive to every woman present. In particular, Xueqi and the other 3, who were not at a disadvantage in front of the international bigwigs, spoke to Ce in such a respectful manner. This further proved that Ce's identity was not to be trifled with. Therefore, the people present were even more envious of Yun Jian. However, they only saw Yun Jian gently nodding her head. Just when everyone thought that she would faint from excitement, she nodded her head and said to Xueqi and the others, "Let's go in. It's been a busy day. You've worked hard." A busy day? Could it be that Yun Jian had ordered the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization to work hard for a day? Oh my god! The faces of the bigwigs present changed instantly. Even their backs straightened. The bigwigs present naturally did not think that Ce was the leader of the Enhun organization. After all, he was so young. It was not that they did not believe it, but they did not dare to believe it. They did not know why the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization called Ce young master. But why would the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization willingly work for Yun Jian for a day? Chapter 1083. While the bosses were still in shock, Adam, who stood furthest to the side, rubbed his head and chuckled at Yun Jian. "It's not hard, not hard. How can it be hard?" Heh. Adam, one of the 4 leaders of Enhun group, was actually saying something like that to Yun Jian. Moreover, his words were laced with flattery. "Let's go in," Yun Jian replied with a nod with a smile. "Go, go, go. What are you waiting for? Young madam has spoken." Adam struck a pose coolly and took a step back. Then, like he was forcing a duck onto a perch, Adam opened his arms and slapped Xueqi and Mo-sen, who were closest to him, on the buttocks. He even put his hands on their shoulders with a grin and pushed them inside. Xueqi and Mo Sen's faces darkened at Adam's action of slapping their butts, but Lin Wei, who stood on the side, walked in alone. Lin Wei was in charge and training of Hun's secret agents and assassins, so he was very capable to begin with. If he was not capable, he would not have been able to make Hun's assassins and secret agents submit to him. Slaying God, the top secret agent in the international secret agent ranking back then, was trained by Lin Wei. From slaying God's weakness in the beginning to her effortless victory over Lin Wei in the end, she learned all of this from Lin Wei. Lin Wei was strong, but at the same time, he was also a very cold person. A man of few words was Lin Wei's personal mark. Although Adam was skillful, he was no match for Lin Wei, who was always accompanied by assassins and secret agents. Moreover, Lin Wei was an impartial person. Adam believed that if he were to slap Lin Wei's buttocks, he would definitely be caught and beaten up on the spot. Xueqi and Mo Sen were slapped by Adam in public, but they did not do anything else. After Xueqi, Mo Sen were led inside by Adam playfully. A luring demon shook off Mare who had latched onto her wrist. It was only then that a luring demon went to Yun Jian and told Yun Jian, "Sister Jian, I'm going in too." With that said, the demoness got Yun Jian's tacit approval and entered the arena with her body swaying. The group of big shots behind him scrambled forward to flatter him. Although Mare smiled helplessly after being shaken off by the demoness, he still chased after her with his long legs. Hu Batian, who had been dragged away by Ce, had already been helped up by Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun. Uncle, could it be that all these people today were hired by her? Not only was Hu Chaochuan short and fat, more importantly, he was brainless. When he saw this group of people heading inside noisily, he immediately recalled the time when Dai Annie and the other two had appeared. His uncle had said that Dai Annie and the other two were most likely hired by Yun Jian to be her stunt performers. If that was the case, could it be that the group of people just now were all hired by Yun Jian? It was just to go through the motions. You idiot! Stop talking so much. Hu Batian was not stupid to have made it this far. He slapped Hu Chaochuan harshly and bellowed. It was just that Hu Chaochuan's words had reached Yun Jian and Ci's ears. Hu Batian was not as dumb as Hu Chaochuan. If Dai Annie and the other two, the three leaders of the Kosha mercenaries, had appeared in the beginning, perhaps Yun Jian could have hired them with some money. Then, all these people who came later, no matter who they were people that Yun Jian could not hire even with money. Just as Hu Batian was thinking about it, he saw a man and a woman coming in from the entrance. The man was tall and muscular while the woman was slender and enchanting. Chapter 1084. Hu Batian was considered an international big shot and had a high status in the world. Hu Batian had been to many international big shots gatherings and naturally recognized some of them. When the man and woman came in again, the man was burly and was almost 2 meters tall. The woman was seductive and had a slim figure. After seeing the two of them, Hu Batian was almost dumbfounded. These two? Weren't these two the elders of the Gu? Kosha mercenaries? Snake, lizard and tiger, leopard. Why were they here? Snake, lizard and tiger, leopard were the same as the four of them. They were the leaders of the Kosha mercenaries. Of course, in the Kosha mercenaries, snake, lizard and tiger, leopard were not called leaders but elders. However, snake, lizard and tiger, leopard's position in the Kosha mercenaries was the same as the four leaders of the Hun organization. Uncle, who are they? Hu Chaochuan was slapped by Hu Batian, but he was not angry. He thought about it and asked. At the same time, Hu Chaochuan had a bad feeling. Hua Yun's heart became more and more complicated when she saw Hu Batian looking at the two people who came in with a frightened expression. Hua Yun wanted to bring her husband, Hu Chaochuan, to show off. If she could bring her husband's uncle, Hu Batian, along, she was sure to win. Ever since she found out that Qin Yiru was getting married to Gu Junjian, Hua Yun had been looking forward to this day. She was looking forward to the day she could bring her powerful and influential husband to show up and slap Qin Yiru in the face in terms of identity or status. She wanted to show Gu Junjian that she had found a man who was many times more powerful than him. What about you? Who do you think you are? But until this moment, Hua Yun realized how stupid it was for her to bring her husband and uncle here. Who could tell her why? Why was she Qin Yiru's daughter? Why was her ex-husband marrying the daughter of a poor woman from the countryside? How could she know so many international big shots? Any one of these big shots could crush her uncle, Hu Batian, whom she was proud of. Hua Yun's face was drained of color. Shut up! Hu Batian was close to tears from his dumb nephew. He slapped Hu Chaochuan again in an attempt to shut him up. After being slapped in the face, Hu Chaochuan shut his mouth. When Hu Chaochuan was slapped by Hu Batian, Hua Yun didn't react. Now, Hua Yun finally reacted. Hua Yun pretended to rush to caress Hu Chaochuan's face. "Hubby, are you okay? Oh my, it's all red." As soon as she finished speaking, Hua Yun caught a glimpse of her respected uncle, Hu Batian, running towards the snake. Lizard and tiger. Leopard like a pug. "You. Why are you two here?" Hu Batian lowered his head and asked cautiously. When the surrounding people heard the sound, they all looked over and were extremely surprised at the same time. Hu Batian looked at Hu Blooked at Hu Baishan's faces and looked at Hu Blook's. "Sister Jen." Both of them greeted respectfully when they stood in front of Yun Jian, just like the others before them. Go on in." Yun Jian nodded naturally. Snake. Lizard and tiger. Leopard then went in without looking back. If the people present did not know the identity of this group of big shots, then they would know. Hu Batian would have the urge to kill himself right now. Of course he knew. It was not a big deal for one or two of these big shots to come. Why were these people, both of them addressing Yun Jian as Sister Jian? They were led by the Kosha mercenaries. Snake. Lizard and tiger. Leopard were elders of the Kosha mercenaries. They would only be so respectful to the boss of the Kosha mercenaries. Hu Baishan's eyes widened as a horrifying thought popped up in his mind. Chapter 1085. Just as Hu Batian thought of this, he immediately shook his head. No, no, no. That's impossible. How old is this girl? How can she be the boss of Kosha mercenaries? Furthermore, the current boss of Kosha mercenaries killed the previous boss 2 to 3 years ago. If this girl is the boss of Kosha mercenaries, then how old was she when she took over Kosha mercenaries? 13? 14? God, children at that age were probably in junior high school. Some were even in primary school. How is that possible? Hu Batian immediately shook his head and eliminated this unrealistic thought. At this moment, Hua Yun's face could no longer be described as pale and bloodless. Back then, she had boasted in front of others that even the military tycoons who had dealings with Kosha mercenaries and an Hun organization had attended her and Hu Chaochuan's wedding. Just a military tycoon who had dealings with Kosha mercenaries and an Hun organization had attended her and Hu Chaochuan's wedding. Back then, Hua Yun was already so smug. But now, Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's wedding venue. The 2 elders of Kosha mercenaries had arrived. The 3 executive team leaders had arrived. The 4 leaders of an Hun organization had arrived. Even the CEO of Rongyao Company, one of the top 10 international corporations in the world, and the CEO of Haji Company, Mayor, had arrived. Not to mention the other big shots that were scattered all over the place. Even the rest of the big shots were enough to crush Hu Batian with one hand. Hua Yun felt that what she had said and done to Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian was no different from a clown who had jumped ship. Thinking of this, Hua Yun's face turned even paler. Let's go. Yun Jian lowered her eyes and glared at Hu Batian. A hint of murderous intent appeared in the corner of her eyes, but it quickly disappeared. She raised her head and looked at Ce. Then, she held his hand and quickly left the place. Apart from the group of big shots who had appeared earlier, the identities and statuses of the people who had appeared later were obviously much weaker. However, it caused a storm among Teacher Lu's group. Zhang Jifan, Su Zetian, Duan Lei, and even Han Biao, the former leader of the top gang in Jia province, who had surrendered to Yun Jian, were all there. This group of people was known to Teacher Lu and the others, but they had never been qualified to come into contact with them. Although they were not as powerful as the previous big shots, they were enough to frighten Teacher Lu and the others. In fact, Teacher Lu and the others did not know the identities of snake, lizard, tiger, leopard and the others. Of course, Teacher Lu and the others did not dare to imagine their identities. After all, people like Zhang Jifan and Su Zetian were not people that Teacher Lu and the others were qualified to interact with. If Yun Jian did not act as an intermediary, Teacher Lu and the others would not have the qualifications to meet snake, lizard and the others. They would never imagine the existence of this group of people. The process of the wedding was still according to the customs of the countryside. However, in terms of class, it was very different from the usual way of marriage in the countryside. This was because Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian were getting married in a hotel today. Hu Batian, Hu Chaochuan, and Hua Yun braced themselves and found a seat. They did not leave immediately. After all, if they did not finish their meal before leaving, Hu Batian would be too ashamed to stay in the underworld if word got out. Today's wedding ceremony was more like the Western process. When everything was over, it was almost 6:30 p.m. The people present were more or less done eating. This group of big shots had all come directly. They had not given Qin Yiru any money before this. Later on, with Snake Lizard taking the lead, the group of big shots swarmed up and gave Qin Yiru money in front of Yun Jian and everyone present. Chapter 1086. This red packet was very thin, so thin that it was as if there was no money in it. Adults usually gave red packets to others, starting from 1 or 200 yuan. Some even gave thousands. Of course, it varied from person to person. Rich people gave more, while poor people gave dozens of yuan. Just now, in front of everyone, Snake Lizard's group was being praised to the sky. Even Hu Batian, who was in the top 20 global multinational companies, was far from it. Everyone present was thinking about it. You're so rich, but the thickness of the red packet can't be seen? In other words, how much money could there be in this thin red packet that looked like it didn't contain any money? It couldn't be only 100 yuan, right? 100 yuan was considered quite a lot among the gifts that the commoners gave each other in 1999. But Snake Lizard's group was different. They were international big shots. How awesome were they bragging one after another just now? Yang Xiaochun, who was sitting at the dining table not far away from the wedding ceremony, couldn't hold it in any longer. She had watched from beginning to end just now. She didn't dare to say a word when she saw Snake Lizard's group of big shots being more powerful than the other. Yang Xiaochun didn't say anything, but it didn't mean that she wasn't envious or jealous. On the contrary, she was envious to death, but she knew that she couldn't get a word in at that time. But this time it was different. This big shot, who was so awesome when she appeared just now, actually gave a red packet that was so thin that the bottom couldn't be seen? How much money could there be in it? 100? Ordinary people could afford a red packet of 100 yuan. This group of people, who were bragging so much just now, actually only gave a red packet of 100 yuan? Since they didn't have money, what were they bragging about just now? That was the thought of everyone who was watching the battle. But only Yang Xiaochun would stand up and point it out if she didn't like it. Your red packet is so thin. Is there money in it? Yang Xiaochun's words carried a strong taste of a village gossipy woman, and her words were quite unpleasant. Just as she finished speaking, Yang Xiaochun continued, "Weren't you all quite awesome just now? Why are you so stingy when it comes to giving red packets?" As soon as Yang Xiaochun finished speaking, the joyous atmosphere around them dropped a few degrees. Some people even pulled Yang Xiaochun's clothes to stop her from talking like that. But Yang Xiaochun ignored him. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She raised her eyebrows, but her eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Xiaochun, don't say that. This is just a small token of appreciation from the children. I'll be too embarrassed to accept it if it's too much." Qin Yiru knew that the gift money was for good luck, so she took the red packet from Snake Lizard's hand and said, "If Snake Lizard gave her too much money, Qin Yiru would be too embarrassed to accept it." Qin Yiru accepted the red packet because Snake Lizard gave her a small amount of money. Then, the group of big shots gave Qin Yiru red packets one after another. But the strange thing was that these red packets were so thin that he didn't know if there was any money inside. Qin Yiru's words just now made Yang Xiaochun even angrier. She directly rushed up to Qin Yiru and said, "Qin Yiru, let us see the big red packets given by these big shots. We're all looking forward to it." Yang Xiaochun gritted her teeth and said. In fact, she was thinking in her heart, what kind of big shots are they? They can't even afford a small red packet. As she said that, Yang Xiaochun even reached out to snatch Qin Yiru's red packet and opened it directly. "Hey!" Qin Yiru didn't even have time to stop her. Yun Jian looked coldly at Yang Xiaochun and said to Qin Yiru, Mom, let her open it. Young Xiaochun didn't care. She quickly opened Snake Lizard's red packet at the bottom. When she took it out, she took out a black card. Young Xiaochun was stunned. She didn't know what this black card that looked like a bank card was. Yun Jian's voice came from behind. This is a black card. It's the highest black gold version of the Centurion series charge card, launched by M Country's American Express in Y Country this year. The credit limit is about 2 to 10 million. Chapter 1087. Snake Lizard's group came here today, so they naturally prepared the money. However, it was different from ordinary people's red packets, and then put a few hundred yuan in the red packet. When they made red packets, they usually put cards in them. Yang Xiaochun snatched the red packets from Qin Yiru's hands, and took out the black card from Snake Lizard's red packet at the bottom. She was still somewhat at a loss. First of all, Yang Xiaochun was just a rural woman, and her knowledge was not broad. Therefore, in her opinion, when people gave others money, there had never been a case where they directly put the bank card in it. After all, the bank card was generally controlled by the person themselves, and no one would give all of their control to others. Second, in 1999, the black card had just been introduced. Generally, the black card did not have a limit, and the black card that Snake Lizard gave Qin Yiru had a credit limit of $88 million. In other words, the black card system had just been introduced, and it was not surprising that a woman like Yang Xiaochun did not know what a black card was. After all, people who could have a black card did not apply for it themselves, but were invited by the bank. In today's world, there were very few people who could be invited to apply for a black card. Therefore, when Yun Jian explained about the black card in Yang Xiaochun's hand, not only was Yang Xiaochun dumbfounded, everyone else in the room was rooted to the spot as well. This card has 88 million yuan in it? Yang Xiaochun was the one who took the red packet just now, and now Yang Xiaochun was still holding the black card in her hand. She lowered her head, and did not understand the black card, but the string of numbers that Yun Jian said shocked her. Yang Xiaochun's hand holding the black card could not stop shaking, but she held the card tightly, for fear that she would accidentally drop it on the ground. If this card was destroyed in her hands, she would not be able to pay it back even if she worked like a cow or a horse for the rest of her life. $88 million, converted to yuan, multiplied by 6, is not much, only about 50 million. Yun Jian lazily refuted Yang Xiaochun's words. Her casual words were in the ears of everyone present, but it was like a wave hitting a rock, and it was very shocking. Only about 50 million? What do you mean by only? That was half of 100 million. Everyone present was trembling with fear. 50 million. Among them, Yang Xiaochun's reaction was the most intense. She was so frightened that her hands went limp. Her hands were not clenched tightly, so the black card was accidentally dropped to the ground by her. Yun Jian could reach out and grab the card so that it wouldn't fall to the ground, but she didn't. Ce, who was standing next to her, sized her up nonchalantly. She didn't care about anything else. As for Snake Lizard, she looked at Yang Xiaochun as if she was looking at a lively clown. When Yang Xiaochun saw that she had thrown 50 million yuan to the ground, she was so scared that her legs went soft. She knelt on the ground and picked up the black card with trembling hands. She hurriedly handed it to Qin Yiru. I'm sorry. I'll return the card to you. Yang Xiaochun almost had a heart attack. As she spoke, her hands were like springs. There were a few times when she handed the card to Qin Yiru, but because her hands were trembling, she couldn't hold it firmly. Qin Yiru also took the card in shock. She didn't expect the card to have such a large amount of money. I'll return it to you. Yang Xiaochun realized that the red packets that Qin Yiru received from the big shots were still in her hands. She was about to return all the red packets to Qin Yiru. A pair of jade hands stopped Yang Xiaochun's actions. Chapter 1088. When Yun Jian said that, her voice was terrifyingly cold and there was a frightening glint in her eyes that could strike fear into anyone. Yang Xiaochun's hands went limp. She almost spilled the red packets on the floor. However, Yang Xiaochun steadied herself in the end. I'll open them? Yang Xiaochun felt her hair stand on end from Yun Jian's words. Since you've taken them, you'll have to open them. Yun Jian sneered as she enticed Yang Xiaochun step by step. Yun Jian knew that if Qin Yiru were to open the red packet herself and Qin Yiru knew how much money was in the card, her reaction would not be any less than Yang Xiaochun's. Therefore, Yun Jian might as well go all the way and let Yang Xiaochun help Qin Yiru open the red packet. No, no, no. This red packet belongs to Yiru. I'll open it. I can't accept this. Yang Xiaochun had been scared to death by the black card. She didn't dare to open the red envelope again. She didn't want to open a few more black cards. However, Yang Xiaochun did not know that the black cards were not owned by all the big shots present. In 1999, the black card system had just been introduced. Other than the top people who owned the black card, even some of the international big shots were not qualified to own it. Of course, even if these international big shots were qualified to own the black card, they would not give it away like Snake Lizard had done. After all, the black card represented a noble status. Those who were qualified to own it would not give it away. It was akin to giving away one's noble status to someone else. No one present would do that. Of course, other than Snake Lizard. To Snake Lizard or the kosher mercenaries, getting a black card was a piece of cake. However, this was not what attracted everyone's attention. Instead, it was Yang Xiaochun who said that she was too embarrassed to open Qin Yiru's red packet. If you're too embarrassed to open it, why did you open my mother's red packet just now? Yun Jian crossed her arms and looked at Yang Xiaochun coldly. Only then did Yang Xiaochun realize that she had snatched Qin Yiru's red packet and opened it. She froze on the spot. Xiao Jian, it's fine. I'll do it myself. Qin Yiru spoke up when she saw that the situation was getting more tense. After saying that, she reached out and took the red packet from Yang Xiaochun's hand. Then, she asked Yang Xiaochun to quickly return to his seat. After all, it was a wedding. What they wanted was peace. Since Qin Yiru had spoken, Yun Jian didn't say anything. After Yang Xiaochun left the stage, Qin Yiru held the black card in her hand and tried to return it to Snake Lizard. This card is too expensive. Auntie can't afford it. The money in this card was enough to ensure that many people would not have to worry for the rest of their lives. Qin Yiru extended her hand to return the money to Snake Lizard. Auntie, this is a small token of my appreciation, Snake Lizard did not take it back but said after a pause. Mom, this money is nothing to her. Just accept it. Yun Jian spoke up as well. Qin Yiru refused, of course. In the end, it was Gu Junjian who spoke up for Qin Yiru to accept it. Gu Junjian was already aware of Snake Lizard and the others' identities. He already knew that Yun Jian was the boss of kosher mercenaries, so he understood that this amount of money was nothing to Snake Lizard and the others. Moreover, this was a token of his child's appreciation, so he let Qin Yiru accept it with peace of mind. After the wedding ceremony, the guests were almost done with their meals. However, the guests had yet to leave as the wedding was still in the middle of the gaming event. Yun Jian was called out by Lan Su halfway and stood at the back door of Tranquil Harmony Hotel. Chapter 1089. Looking at Yun Jian's questioning gaze, Lan Su was silent for a while before nodding. Yun Jian, I've been on Earth for so long. It's time to go back. Lan Su paused. Because the witch tribe of Yulong continent needs me. Because the witch tribe of Yulong continent needed her. It was such a simple reason. However, for thousands of years, Lan Su had taken on the mission of carrying the entire witch tribe with this reason alone. It was because the sorcerer god had left behind a sentence. I'll definitely return after 1,000 years. Now, 1,000 years had passed. Lan Su had found the sorcerer god of her witch tribe. However, unfortunately, Yun Jian did not remember the past. She did not remember the past, and she had even forgotten the Yulong continent. However, Lan Su did not forget that she, Lan Su, was born in the witch tribe. Even if she died, she would die in the witch tribe. As for her sorcerer god, Lan Su really hoped that Yun Jian would return with her. The words that had been passed down since ancient times were not without basis. The sorcerer god lived, and the witch tribe would prosper. If the sorcerer god died, the witch tribe would perish. The sorcerer god's return could revive the witch tribe that had been silent for thousands of years. They could take back the throne that belonged to them as the #1 family in the Yulong continent. This was the source of motivation that Lan Su and all of the witch tribe's people looked forward to. However, Yun Jian was unwilling. Of course, this was the sorcerer god's own choice. Lan Su admitted that she really wanted Yun Jian to return to the Yulong continent with her. However, since Yun Jian was unwilling, she would not force her. "So, will you come back?" Yun Jian felt that someone was eavesdropping on her conversation with Lan Su. She raised her eyebrows and changed her question to Lan Su. Lan Su was silent for a while. Her tall figure looked very lonely. After a pause, Lan Su didn't answer Yun Jian's question. Instead, he asked Yun Jian, "Sorcerer goddess, are you really not going back?" This time, Lan Su didn't call her Yun Jian, nor was she joking. Her expression was very serious. Looking at Lan Su, Yun Jian nodded again. "Okay." In the end, Yun Jian added, "My family is here." "And him." Lan Su seemed unwilling to give up. She parted her lips and smiled again. "Then, what if the shaman tribe is about to die out? Are you still not going back?" Yun Jian fell silent. In Yun Jian's subconscious mind, whether it was the Yulong continent or the sorcerer tribe, everything was foreign to her. That was why she wouldn't go there instead of going back. "I understand." Lan Su revealed a bitter smile that was filled with too much bitterness. She fell silent for 2 seconds as well. "I will bring the sandalwood box back to the Yulong continent." Lan Su's voice gradually became softer. She paused and lowered her head to look at the ground. Then, she suddenly raised her head to look at Yun Jian with an ethereal and lonely tone. "I probably won't come back in the future." At the end of her sentence, her voice was so soft that only Lan Su could hear it. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a figure that had been enduring for a long time. It was rushing over here. "What did you say?" "Damned woman, how dare you not come back?" "What did you say?" "I dare you to say it one more time." Just as Lan Su finished her last sentence and gently lowered her head to Yun Jian, a slender figure suddenly rushed out from the dark. There was a hint of dominance in this figure's vigor. The voice that came out of his mouth carried with it a hint of anger. Lan Su's eyelids twitched. She had just raised her eyes when she saw Yun Jian's innocent face, who looked like she was watching a show. When she turned her head again, she saw Adam's handsome face that looked like he was about to skin her alive. Chapter 1090. Yun Jian. Yun Jian, hurry up and save me, has he gone mad? Lan Su was shocked by Adam's rage. She thought that Adam had gone mad and hurriedly asked Yun Jian for help. But when she turned around, she saw Yun Jian standing at the same spot and blinking innocently at her again. Then, Yun Jian actually turned around and walked towards the back door of Clear Rhythm Hotel, returning to the wedding ceremony venue in a flash. When she was about to walk through the door, Yun Jian's back was facing her. She stretched out a slender jade hand under the night light and waved at Lan Su with her back facing her. Yun Jian's action had the feeling of telling Lan Su to take care of herself. Lan Su couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Then, she was dragged to a corner by Adam. Lan Su didn't see that when Yun Jian walked into Clear Rhythm Hotel, she even symbolically curved her red lips. Ever since Adam was injured and Lan Su took care of him, Yun Jian could tell that this guy was interested in Lan Su. Actually, Adam's injury had healed long ago. That little injury on his leg back then, could it really make Adam, one of the 4 leaders of an Hun group, injured for so long? What a joke. It was just that Adam had always pretended that his injury was serious and needed someone to support him to walk. This was something that everyone had noticed. Only a silly child like Lan Su didn't know. She really thought that Adam had just recovered recently and had always felt guilty that Adam was seriously injured because of her. Just as Yun Jian stepped into Tranquil Rhythm Hotel, she was greeted by 2 tall silhouettes. Mo Sen was frowning as he walked towards Yun Jian. He looked at Yun Jian and paused before asking, "Young mistress, did you see Adam just now?" Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. She didn't blush at all when she lied. "No, you're looking for him? How can there be anything? Haha. Mo Sen is just a little worried about that brat Adam. To be honest, that brat Adam has never let us be at ease." Holding a glass of wine, Xueqi bumped into Mo Sen with a smile. After that, he put his arm around Mo Sen's shoulder. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Just as she was about to say something, a familiar and pleasant male voice came from behind her. Are you two bored out of your minds? You're not going to help, huh? Siyi's magnetic and pleasant male voice came from behind her. When she came back to her senses, Yunjian felt that she had been pulled into a broad body with a familiar warmth. Siyi bluntly said to Mo Sen and Xueqi. Now that the wedding ceremony was over, all the big shots were planning to leave by car. Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's fellow villagers were also planning to leave with wedding candies. There were still some things that needed to be cleaned up, so Siyi asked Mo Sen and Xueqi to help. After listening to Siyi's words, Mo Sen and Xueqi left in a flash. Siyi hugged Yunjian from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. What naughty things did you do this time? Siyi's sword-like eyebrows flashed. He smiled and said, matchmaking. Yunjian only smiled slightly. Then, she nimbly broke free from Siyi's embrace and took 2 steps forward. Siyi raised his handsome eyebrows and followed her. On the other side, Lan Su was dragged by Adam to a dark corner. Are you crazy? Lan Su was mercilessly thrown to the corner by Adam. She was hit hard by the wall and shouted at Adam when she came back to her senses. Yes, I am crazy. Adam pressed Lan Su against the wall in a rather violent manner. He reached out his right hand and punched the wall. The mud wall was smashed into powder by Adam's punch. Tell me, why are you leaving? Adam's eyes were red. Lan Su was silent for 2 seconds. She didn't dare to look directly into Adam's eyes. After a pause, she looked directly at Adam. What does it have to do with you whether I leave or not? Chapter 1091. Adam felt like he was crazy. He must be crazy right now. When he heard that this damn woman was leaving, Adam felt like his whole world was about to collapse. This kind of feeling was really like one of the things that one loved was about to leave one's side. More importantly, what did this damn woman say? She probably won't come back? Won't come back? Dream on. She wanted to leave? She didn't even ask for his permission. Adam bit Lan Su's lips hard. Lan Su's height was very tall, but in front of Adam, she still appeared very small. Moreover, Adam bent down and kissed her directly. Lan Su didn't even have time to react. By the time Lan Su reacted, Adam was already holding her head and fiercely biting her lips. The 4 leaders of the Enhun organization were all virgins. Don't laugh when you see this. Because not only were they virgins, they still had their first kiss. Probably influenced by Siyi's hatred of women, the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization didn't have a single woman by their side. Even when Xueqi represented the kosher mercenaries to meet other organizations in places like nightclubs, Xueqi always kept a distance from women. Therefore, when Adam bit Lan Su's lips, it was extremely awkward. This kiss was like biting each other. When Lan Su was kissed hard by Adam, she almost pushed Adam away at the same time. However, she couldn't push him away no matter how hard she tried. Therefore, she bared her teeth and bit Adam's lips hard, trying to push him away. Tears welled up in her eyes. Whether it was in Yulong mainland or on Earth, Lan Su had always maintained her cold and aloof image. Lan Su didn't purposely maintain this image. It was just her nature. The witches had their own rules. Witches weren't allowed to have too much contact with men. Therefore, Lan Su always kept a distance of a few meters from men. When Adam was injured, it was all her fault. Therefore, Lan Su had planned to support Adam the entire time. This was already the limit. As for today's kiss, it was already against the rules of the witches. As a woman of the witch tribe, she was not allowed to have any symbolic contact with men other than her husband. He couldn't even hold her hand. Adam's kiss scared Lan Su to death. Lan Su did not dare to use the techniques of the Yulong continent on Earth, so she was naturally no match for Adam. The last time he used Yulong land's technique, Lan Su had been unable to make any progress in his cultivation for 100 years. If there was another 100 years, it would be even harder for her to accept than killing Lan Su. Only when one's life was in danger could they use Yulong land's moves. Otherwise, on Earth, Lan Su would never do it even if he had to die. Adam kissed Lan Su for 10 minutes. Lan Su also used her pair of weak and frail hands to slap Adam for a full 10 minutes. She even bit him with all her might. By the time he let go, Adam's lips were already stained with Lan Su's blood. After Adam let go of Lan Su, he saw that her cheeks were full of tears. The witches had their own rules. Lan Su had always abided by them. But today, "Damned woman, how dare you cry in front of me?" Adam saw Lan Su's red eyes and became even angrier. The witches have their own rules. Witches are not allowed to have any physical contact with men. Otherwise, there are only two choices. Lan Su didn't look at Adam and didn't say anything else. Chapter 1092. Lan Su had just turned around when she was pulled back by Adam. "You still want to leave?" Adam's voice was low and deep. There was a hint of, "If you dare to leave, I'll teach you a lesson," in his domineering tone. Lan Su's hand was once again grabbed by Adam. She was a bit scared of the current Adam, but she still nodded coldly and arrogantly. "Yes. What if I want you to stay for me?" Adam's eyes were bloodshot. One of his fists was tightly clenched. He looked at Lan Su's frail body with her back facing him and asked fiercely, "I'm sorry, Lan Su lowered her head. She had no choice but to leave. She existed because she was the sorcerer god's guardian. She was the sorcerer god's guardian, and also the sorcerer tribe's guardian. The sorcerer god could choose not to return, but she had to leave. Apologize?" Adam suddenly grabbed Lan Su's hand and laughed with bloodshot eyes. "Can't have any physical contact with men? To hell with the tribe's rules. I'm going to Xueqi you today." Adam suddenly grabbed Lan Su's hand. His grip on Lan Su was shockingly strong. At the same time, he grabbed Lan Su tightly and walked straight to the luxurious suite he had been staying in for the past few days at Clear Rhythm Hotel. Adam did not stay at Dong Ruan's house for the past few days mainly because there was no one at Dong Ruan's house. Everyone from Dong Ruan's family had gathered at Zhang Meihua's house in Xinjiang town. Adam was fortunate enough to have moved out. He chose to stay at Clear Rhythm Hotel where the wedding banquet was held. Lan Su's face turned pale when she heard Adam's last sentence. "Are you crazy? If a woman from the sorcerer tribe has any relationship with a man, I can only kill you." Lan Su's face instantly turned pale. She did not even know why Adam would say something like that to her and do something so outrageous. "There's a second choice, isn't there?" Adam dragged Lan Su to the entrance of the hotel suite. He swiped the access card and dragged Lan Su inside. There was indeed a second option. If a woman from the sorcerer tribe had sex with a man before marriage, the man would either have to marry her, kill the man, or die. There was no other choice. "What are you doing? Don't mess around. I'm going back to the Yulong continent now. I'll never come back for the rest of my life if you treat me like this." Lan Su shouted desperately. She was afraid of the present Adam. Adam was originally a little rational, but when he heard Lan Su repeatedly mention that she would never return after returning to the Yulong mainland, he became even more furious. He grabbed Lan Su and dragged her into his suite. I don't believe you. I'll Xueqi you today." Whenever Adam thought of Lan Su leaving and never coming back, he couldn't control himself. After dragging Lan Su into his suite, he closed the door behind him. Then he dragged Lan Su to the edge of the bed and threw Lan Su onto the bed. Lan Su was scared out of her wits. She was just about to stand up when Adam roughly threw her back onto the bed. "Adam, what are you doing? Are you crazy?" After a few rounds, Lan Su's hands were pinned onto the bed by Adam. She was wearing a floral skirt that reached her knees today. Now that her thighs were separated by Adam, she was so scared that she screamed immediately. Without the Yulong continent's techniques, she had no way of fighting back. Chapter 1093. Adam's rough voice rang out. Whenever he thought of Lan Su leaving and never coming back, he couldn't help but tremble. He had never lost control like this in his entire life. Everyone in the Enhun organization knew that Adam had a bad temper. Among the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization, Adam had the worst temper while Mo-san had the calmest temper. Lin Wei and Xueqi happened to have both. Adam was also the one who liked to joke around. Lan Su had supported Adam for so long because of his injury, but this was the first time she saw Adam so angry. She was scared silly. You can't do this. You need to calm down. Calm down. Lan Su stretched out her hands to stop Adam from tearing her clothes apart. She tried her best to close her slender legs. But at this moment, Adam didn't listen at all. He had already completely lost control. Calm down? I'm very calm now. As Adam spoke, he rudely tore apart Lan Su's thin floral dress. At the same time, he used his leg to stop Lan Su's legs from closing. At this moment, Lan Su was only wearing a bra and panties. Her perfect body didn't have a single bit of fat on it. Her well-proportioned and tender baby-like skin appeared in front of Adam. When Adam saw this scene, he almost went crazy. At this moment, even if the heavenly king came, he would still do her. Her two shameful places were torn off. Her hands were raised high and her thighs were completely pushed apart. When she felt Adam's naked body pressing down on her, Lan Su gave up struggling. What happened in the hotel suite didn't affect the few people who were still cleaning up the mess of the wedding ceremony. Other than Adam, the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization were helping to clean up the mess of the wedding ceremony. Where do you think Adam went? Why hasn't he come back to help after so long? Xueqi fiddled with the things in his hands lazily as he spoke. He went to mess with people again. That's his only hobby. Even Lin Wei, who didn't like to talk, spoke up. Lin Wei was the oldest among the 4 leaders of the Enhun organization. At the same time, he was also the most mature when it came to handling matters. Among the 3 of them, only Mo Sen did not say a word. Mo Sen had a bad premonition, but he couldn't tell what it was. The wedding was completely over, but the mess in the bridal chamber had yet to begin. All the international bigwigs took their leave one after another. Even Siren said goodbye to Yun Jian and returned to Country M. Most of Xinjiang town's neighbors who had come to attend the wedding had left. The disturbance at the bridal chamber at night was just a prank between a group of close friends and relatives. Most of the people had already left. The helpers were still busy. There were many things that needed to be moved back from the wedding ceremony. Yun Jian was the only one there, sitting on a bench with her arms crossed leisurely. Ce had already been dragged away by Yun Yi to help. Ce dared not slack off when his future daughter-in-law's brother asked for his help. As a result, the leader of the Enhun organization, the young master of the strongest armaments family in the Cold Pavilion, was now reduced to being ordered around to do work for others. But the most bizarre thing was that he was willing to help. Since Ce was called to help, Yun Jian sat alone on the bench. Qing Yu had also been asked to help by her brother. Yun Jian sat on the stool with one arm leaning against the dining table while her other hand lifted her phone gently to glance at the time on it. It had been less than half an hour since the guests left. Sister Jian. Just as she saw that the time on her phone was 7 o'clock, 2 silhouettes appeared in front of Yun Jian. It was not hard to tell that they were snake, lizard and tiger, leopard. Let's go. Yun Jian turned off her phone, a faint murderous glint flashing across her eyes. Chapter 1094. Wanjiang Expressway Intersection. Hu Batian had already parted ways with Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun and was heading to the nearest airport. To get to the nearest airport, one had to pass through Wanjiang Expressway. There was a long stretch of desolate land from the downtown area to Wanjiang Expressway. In other words, there was a long stretch of road from the downtown area to Wanjiang Expressway. There were only occasional cars passing by. At this moment, Hu Batian was heading to the nearest airport to take a flight back to Country M. Hu Chaochuan and Hua Yun were not on the same route as Hu Batian. Hu Batian came to Country Z today purely because he was entrusted by his nephew, Hu Chaochuan. He hoped that he could come to Country Z to support Hu Chaochuan. However, Hu Batian did not expect that not only did he not find his place today, he was even slapped in the face by Yun Jian. Thinking of this, Hu Batian was so angry that his mind was in a mess. Suddenly, Hu Batian's eyelids twitched. He had a bad feeling. "Sir, please drive faster." Hu Batian stuck his head out and said to the taxi driver. "Aye." The taxi driver responded. At this moment, they had already reached the darkest and most uninhabited place. Hu Batian's eyelids twitched again. In the next second, he saw the driver's lips curl into a smile through the mirror beside the driver. This strange smile made Hu Batian's heart skip a beat. In the next breath, He felt that the driver had turned the steering wheel and rushed straight to a small path that no one could pass through. Before Hubatian could react, the driver had already slammed on the brakes and stopped in the middle of the field. At this moment, 3 figures walked out from the dark. One of them was a slender, skinny girl. Behind the girl was a man and a woman. The girl waved her hand lightly. The burly man, who was at least 2 meters tall, walked forward to open the door and dragged Hubatian out of the car. At this moment, in a high-class suite in Qingyun Hotel, the room was a mess. The floor and the bedside were filled with men and women's clothes. On the soft bed, Lan Su clutched the bedsheets tightly. She stared blankly at the ceiling. Adam grabbed his short black hair and sat on the edge of the bed. Half of the bedsheet was lifted up. Under the bedding, there was a red bloodstain that symbolized the purity of a young girl. Adam stepped on the bed with one foot. He was feeling very restless right now. He reached out his hand to rub his short hair fiercely. He turned his head to look at Lan Su rather impatiently. He saw Lan Su gather the bedding and turn his head to the other side. Adam waited for a long time but didn't hear a single word from Lan Su. His mood became even more restless. He immediately turned his head to look at Lan Su. His tone was still as rude as ever. "Hey, woman!" he shouted, but Lan Su ignored him. The wizard race had their own rules. Lan Su had a chastity sand on her since she was young, which was different from the people living on Earth in the modern era. This chastity sand symbolized a woman's purity. She thought that there was nothing more despairing than not being able to find the sorcerer god. But now, since Adam had done such a thing to her, the chastity sand on her wrist had naturally disappeared. Lan Su couldn't describe how she felt. But the strange thing was, after Adam did such a terrible thing to her, she wasn't angry at all. She didn't even have the thought of killing him. But if the wizard race knew that she had sex with a man... Chapter 1095. Adam felt Lan Su's deep resistance, and his stubborn temper flared up again. Just as he was about to push Lan Su down again, he met Lan Su's teary eyes. Adam was stunned. "Fuck, where did I hurt you?" Adam hurriedly got up from Lan Su, and then sat to the side. He looked back and forth a few times, but didn't find any wounds on Lan Su's body. His worried look for Lan Su was 10,000 times more exaggerated than when he was heavily injured. Lan Su glanced at Adam, and then turned around to ignore Adam. Seeing this, Adam fiercely slapped his head. He looked at Lan Su, and the words of apology that were on the tip of his tongue couldn't come out. After waiting for a long time, Lan Su finally spoke. "Why did you do this to me? You like this? How do you want me to live in the future?" Adam scratched his head and remained silent for a long while. In the end, he muttered a muffled sentence. "I was impulsive." He, Adam, had never lost control like this before. Damn it! Just as Adam said this, he saw Lan Su, who was lying down with her back to him, slowly reach out her right wrist that should have been marked with the chastity mark. "If my clansmen knew about this, they would kill you." Lan Su closed her eyes, and her beautiful eyes flickered up and down. "Kill me?" Adam raised his eyebrows and asked. Lan Su nodded her head with her back to Adam and said, "MHM. So let's treat today's matter as if it never happened. Forget about today's matter. I won't marry anyone in this life anyways." Lan Su's soft moans entered Adam's ears, and he immediately remembered how alluring Lan Su's sweet moans were during the intense moments just now. Adam resisted the urge to push Lan Su down again, and reached out his hand to grab Lan Su, forcing Lan Su to look into his eyes. Then Adam resisted the rough words that came out of his mouth. He looked Lan Su in his eyes, and added a hint of sweetness in his domineering tone. "Damn woman, you're already like this with me, and you want me to forget today's matter? Not a chance. Let me tell you, I, your father, will definitely marry you." Adam held Lan Su's face, and said these words in a flustered and exasperated manner. Lan Su originally thought that Adam was only interested in her, so she didn't think about whether Adam would take responsibility for her or not. But when she heard Adam's words, Lan Su stared blankly. Then she saw Adam once again pouncing on her, and planted a red strawberry berry mark to her to the point. Lan Su's up to the point. "To marry me, your father's, I, your father to marry you. So you're not to leave. Do you hear me?" Although these words were domineering and didn't allow her to refute, Lan Su's heart unconsciously warmed. She actually couldn't help but reach out her hand to respond to Adam. A moment of lingering. At the same time, on a small field road that was quite a distance away from the Wanjiang Expressway. Tiger. Leopard dragged Hu Batian out of the taxi driver's car. Yun Jian looked at Hu Batian with her arms crossed, and her eyebrows slightly raised. You. It's you. What do you want to do? Hu Batian quickly recognized the three people standing in front of him. Weren't they Yun Jian, Snake, Lizard, and Tiger? Leopard. He was so scared that his face turned pale. Snake, Lizard and Tiger. Leopard were the two elders of the Kosha mercenaries. Their status was second only to the Kosha mercenaries' boss. Heh. Yun Jian lightly snorted. She crossed her arms and looked at Hu Batian. After a while she faintly said to Hu Batian, I don't want to do anything, I just want to settle a score with you. What? Hu Batian's collar was grabbed by the tall and sturdy Tiger. Leopard. And he trembled with fear as he asked. Do you still remember not long ago when you joined forces with the military organization to plot against my Kosha mercenaries? Yun Jian casually said, and her smile was eerie and terrifying. Chapter 1096. Listening to Yun Jian calling herself Kosha mercenaries, Hu Batian's legs turned to jelly from the shock. When Snake, Lizard, Tiger, Leopard, Diani, Gue Yen, and Gue Lian, all the famous figures of Kosha mercenaries, addressed Yun Jian as Sister Jian during the wedding ceremony, Hu Batian had already been suspicious. In spite of it, he had always thought that Yun Jian was so young. How could she be the one from the Kosha mercenaries? Hence, he did not have any doubts. It was only when Yun Jian said what she said just now that Hu Batian snapped back to reality. She had actually referred to herself as Gu Sha mercenaries and had pointed out her recent actions so accurately. Hu Batian felt like he was struck by lightning. He slumped to the floor but Tiger. Leopard held him back from sitting completely. He then looked at Yun Jian with a shaky gaze and uttered what he said just now. Yun Jian did not admit to Hu Batian's words directly. She merely smiled faintly before her smile faded. The girl's slender figure stood in front of Hu Batian. If he had not heard what Yun Jian said just now or seen what Yun Jian did now, Hu Batian would probably have thought that she was an innocent and harmless girl. Yun Jian ignored Hu Batian, raising a brow with a smile. She kept quiet for a while before she spoke. I wasn't looking for you but you came to me yourself. Hu Batian, what do you think are your chances of leaving this place alive today? As Yun Jian smirked, a butterfly knife was already hooked in her hand. It spun nimbly and swiftly between her fingers. Seeing Yun Jian's action and hearing her words, Hu Batian could not help gulping. You. What do you want? Hu Batian asked in a trembling voice. Hu Batian paused. He was afraid that Yun Jian would really kill him, so he continued, I can give you anything as long as you don't kill me. After hearing Yun Jian's name, they started to beg for mercy before they even started to attack. Yun Jian just smiled coldly. After you die, your things will naturally belong to me. Yun Jian crossed her arms. She did not look directly at Hu Batian. Instead, she looked into the distance. Now, I only want to know your relationship with the former Inferno Ring. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows and said. Upon hearing that Yun Jian knew that he was related to the destroyed Inferno Ring, Hu Batian's heart trembled violently. He averted his eyes as if he was dodging something, and his cunning eyes shifted slightly. What are you talking about? I've only worked with the mercenaries once. I don't know about the former Inferno Ring you're talking about. Hu Batian refused to admit it. Considering his own safety, Hu Batian added, but it's fine if you want to know. I'll only tell you. Tell the others to leave. As soon as Hu Batian finished speaking, Yun Jian agreed, okay. As soon as Yun Jian agreed, Snake, Lizard, Tiger, Leopard, and the driver walked away. Hu Batian then put his hands behind his back and said, since you know that I'm related to the former Inferno Ring, I don't mind telling you. The mysterious person who controlled the former Inferno Ring and tried to destroy the Kosha mercenaries came from a Yulong mainland. As soon as Hu Batian finished speaking, he saw that Yun Jian was listening intently, so he suddenly withdrew his hands from behind his back. With this retraction, two sharp blades appeared in his hands. Chapter 1097. Just as Hu Batian was about to stab his saber at Yun Jian, a butterfly knife that was several times faster than him followed the trajectory of the wind and struck his heart. 2 seconds before Hu Batian was about to stab Yun Jian with both sabers, the butterfly knife in her hand was 2 seconds faster than Hu Batian as it plunged into his chest. Hu Batian's eyes widened at the speed of Yun Jian's hand as he glared at the girl who was grinning like the Grim Reaper in the dark. All of a sudden, he felt his chest tighten, and he could feel the butterfly knife stabbing into his beating heart. Hu Batian felt himself leaning backward as he looked at Yun Jian in disbelief, as if he had suddenly understood something. Why? No wonder. Why did I die in your hands when I made the first move? So you're really slaying God. No wonder you could really kill me. Before Hu Batian could even finish his sentence, his body had already tilted backwards in an arc. Finally, a second before his consciousness faded completely, Hu Batian heard the last thing he heard in his life as a human. Because I'm slaying God. Because she's slaying God, so you have to die. Right after Yun Jian spoke, Hu Batian closed his eyes forever. Sister Jian. Snake. Lizard. Tiger. Leopard. And the driver called out in unison when they came back to look at Yun Jian. The driver was none other than Raccoon, who was skilled in disguise. After Raccoon put on makeup for Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian, he killed Hu Batian's driver and disguised himself as a man before taking Hu Batian to the highway. That was how the flawless plan came to be. Amen. Yun Jian looked at the trio and nodded softly before adding, "Take care of the body. Today's trip wasn't in vain." Today's trip was indeed not in vain, because she found out one thing. Hu Batian had told her a secret before he died. The mysterious person who controlled the former Inferno Ring was from the Yulong continent. Although Hu Batian eventually planned to use this secret to try to kill her, Yun Jian was able to recognize it. The mysterious person who controlled the former Inferno Ring was indeed from the Yulong continent. Now that he knew about this matter, it wasn't hard to let it go. In his previous life, the kidnapping of his younger brother and his subsequent murder were all controlled by the Inferno Ring. The Inferno Ring had already been destroyed by Yun Jian and Ce. Later, he found out that there was someone else controlling the Inferno Ring. Later, a series of things happened to Yun Jian, including various assassination attempts. It could be deduced that all of this had something to do with that mysterious man. Ever since Yun Jian was assassinated, Yun Jian and Ce had never given up on investigating this matter. Especially Ce. Everything Yun Jian knew today was told to her by Ce. Today, she finally knew that the mysterious man was from the Yulong continent. By the time Yun Jian returned to Clear Rhythm Hotel, it was already 7:30 p.m. Most of the things here were already packed and Qin Yiru had already been sent back to Gu Yunjian's house. Many of Gu Yunjian's comrades had also gone to Gu Yunjian's house noisily. They rolled up their sleeves and said that they were going to wreak havoc in the new house. Yun Jian had just gotten out of the car when she saw Ce walking towards her. "Where did you go?" Ce walked over and grabbed her little hand, asking softly. "To kill someone." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She said it so softly that only the two of them could hear it. Chapter 1098. Just as Yun Jian gently leaned into Ce's embrace and felt his warm embrace, a voice came from the side. "Young master, Adam is missing." Hearing this voice and feeling the girl leave his embrace in the next second, Ce furrowed his brows in displeasure. Yun Jian quickly extricated herself from Ce's embrace. She looked at Emo-sen, who was looking at Ce with a rather worried gaze, and raised her eyebrows. Before Ce could reply to Emo-sen turned his gaze towards Yun Jian. "Young madam, have you seen Adam?" Yun Jian's eyes sharpened. She wiped her red lips and said, "I have." "Where?" Emo-sen asked anxiously. "The hotel's back door." He pulled Lan Su and left. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Hearing this, Emo-sen's nervous emotions slowly relaxed a little. "Thank you, young madam. I'll go take a look." Emo-sen finished speaking and turned to leave. "Let's go take a look too." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Just a moment ago, she suddenly made a decision, so she decided to go look for Lan Su now. As she spoke, she pulled Ce and walked in that direction. The girl's fragrance assailed his nostrils. Ce was unconsciously pulled along by Yun Jian. Two living people had disappeared here just like that. Yun Jian couldn't just aimlessly continue searching. Thus, she suggested going to the surveillance room of Clear Rhythm Hotel to look for them. After looking through the surveillance, she found Adam and Lan Su's figures. It wasn't strange for a 4-star hotel like Clear Rhythm Hotel to have surveillance. Through the surveillance, everyone present saw the scene of Adam forcefully dragging Lan Su into the hotel's large suite. As for the scene of Adam forcefully kissing Lan Su, because it wasn't near the hotel surveillance didn't record it. Damn, good brat. Adam, this fellow is too ferocious. Don't you have any sense of pity for the fairer sex? Xueqi laughed when he saw the surveillance video. His smile was handsome. If it wasn't for the long scar on his neck, Xueqi would definitely be the most handsome of the 4 leaders of an Hun. Beside him, Lin Wei saw the surveillance camera, but he didn't seem to be moved at all. Emosen didn't say anything, but his face clearly darkened. Just as he walked to the door of the big suite, Emosen quickly unlocked the door. Ce, Lin Wei, and Xueqi stood at the door and didn't enter. Yun Jian, however, followed him in. As soon as the door opened, the smell of sex assaulted his nose. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. Damn, Adam, this brat is really amazing. Xueqi stood at the door and saw the messy clothes on the floor. He couldn't help but ridicule again. At this time, Emosen had already walked in with a sullen face. Lan Su and Adam were shocked when they saw Emosen, of course. Although Lan Su and Adam were naked, their bodies were covered with a thick blanket. When Emosen saw this scene, his eyelids only twitched. Then he shouted at Adam, "Adam, put on your clothes and get out here." With that, Emosen turned and left. This was the first time in his life that Emosen was so angry. When Emosen just came in, Lan Su buried her head under the blanket. They all knew? She was too ashamed to face them. Yun Jian smiled. She stood at a distance and looked at Lan Su and Adam, who were huddled together under the blanket. She looked straight at the bulging Lan Su under the blanket and said, "Don't go back to Yulong mainland first. I'll go back with you during the summer break." With that, she turned and left the room, leaving some space for Lan Su and Adam. As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, Lan Su popped her head out of the blanket in surprise and joy. "Yun Jian, really?" Chapter 1099. Damn it, woman, can't you open your eyes for me? You're not even wearing any F*** clothes. Adam didn't say the last sentence. He reached his hand into his hair impatiently. He was very impatient, but he suppressed his violent temper and growled at Lan Su. Lan Su was really too excited just now. Yun Jian actually agreed to return to Yulong mainland. So Lan Su was really too excited. Sorry, I was too excited. Lan Su wasn't even listening to what Adam was saying to her right now. She was so excited that her entire body was trembling. She was so excited that she couldn't control herself. So she opened her mouth and replied to Adam carelessly. Adam was just yelled at by Emosen, and he was in a mess right now. In the end, when he heard Lan Su's extremely perfunctory words, the corners of his mouth immediately twitched. Lan Su was excited. She had just slid her pure white jade feet to the ground and was about to pick up the embarrassing inner and outer clothes that were thrown messily on the ground. Her legs suddenly went soft, and a certain part of her body hurt. Her entire body almost went limp and fell to the ground. Adam caught her hand in time and flipped her entire body back onto the bed. Adam's figure flashed, and he propped himself up on Lan Su's upper body without an inch of clothing. He looked sharply at her naked body under the bedding. "Ah, you! Don't look!" Lan Su was shocked. She hurriedly reached out her hand to cover her chest, covering a certain part. "What are you covering up for?" "Not only have I seen it, I've also touched it all over." Adam curled his lips wickedly and said these shameful words very seriously. "You!" Lan Su's face instantly flushed red. Her rosy cheeks were pink and tender. When Adam saw this scene, he almost couldn't help but do Lan Su again. But considering that Yun Jian and the others had already walked out of the door and were walking towards the living room on the first floor, Adam still turned over and stood up. After Yun Jian and Emosen came out of the big suite, they followed the others to the living room on the first floor of the hotel. He left all the space for the 2 people in the room. Emosen's face was terrifyingly dark. Even Xueqi and Lin Wei, 2 people who didn't understand romance, could feel that the atmosphere was not right. "Haha, What's the matter, Emo-sen? Don't tell me you're jealous of that brat Adam? Xueqi laughed as he walked in front of Emo-sen, and lightly placed his hand on Emo-sen's shoulder. However, Emo-sen slapped his hand away. Hey, what's wrong? Xueqi couldn't understand. He laughed and said, Hey, what's wrong? On the other side, Yunjian was sitting on a leather sofa in the lounge of the large living room on the first floor. Ce was standing beside Yunjian. After waiting for a while, they finally saw two people walking down the stairs. Adam, who was dressed in formal attire, walked at the very front, followed by a somewhat embarrassed Lan Su. Seeing Lan Su walking so slowly, Adam turned around and grabbed Lan Su's hand and walked over. Yunjian raised her eyebrows. She and Ce didn't open their mouths. In terms of emotions, Ce was free to raise Adam and the other three. When Adam pulled Lan Su and walked over, Emo-sen's eyes flashed. The few people present clearly saw Emo-sen's eyes darken. He directly walked over and rushed in front of Adam. Raising his hand, Emo-sen ferociously punched Adam's chest. Adam was struggling. His whole body tilted backward and fell. Adam took a few steps back before stopping. Emo-sen, are you crazy? After stopping, Adam covered his chest and looked at Emo-sen in shock. He didn't think that Emo-sen would actually beat him like this. Just as he stopped, he saw Emo-sen standing in front of Lan Su. Chapter 1100. Lan Su was frightened by Emo-sen's action just now. She saw Emo-sen beat up Adam and stood in front of her. She couldn't help but widen her eyes and stare blankly. Actually, it didn't matter to her whether she was responsible or not, because she still had more important things to do. Lan Su was just about to rush to Yunjian when she suddenly saw that Emo-sen didn't answer him. He thought that Lan Su was wronged. Emo-sen quickly walked over and grabbed Adam's collar and pulled him in front of Lan Su. Adam, apologize. Emo-sen bellowed at Adam. Adam touched the bridge of his nose. He cursed in his heart for a while. Didn't he say that he wanted to marry Lan Su as his wife? Why did Emo-sen still think that he was just playing around with Lan Su? Seeing that Adam didn't speak, Emo-sen clenched his fist and hit Adam again. Before he even touched Adam's clothes, Lan Su's words came over. Don't hit. Today's matter was voluntary. Lan Su went against her conscience and said such a sentence. When Adam was beaten by Emo-sen, he obviously didn't fight back. She was really afraid that Emo-sen beat Adam too hard and something happened to Adam. If something happened to Adam, what should she do? Lan Su frowned. She suddenly thought of this. Just when she thought of this, Lan Su immediately loosened her brows. Pay. She still hadn't said that she would agree to be with Adam. Emo-sen's fist rushed to Adam's cool face. He was just about to hit it. Hearing Lan Su's words, he stopped. Adam, don't forget what Mom and Dad said to us before they passed away. In this life, you can only be loyal to one woman. Once you've decided on a person, you have to protect her with your life. Emo-sen clenched his fist and placed it in front of Adam's head. In the end, he didn't hit Adam, but said such words. With that, he turned around and left the place. He quickly walked out of the door of Clear Rhythm Hotel. After Emo-sen left, Adam stood in the same place. He was also silent. Yunjian sat not far away and watched. When she heard Emo-sen's words, she was surprised and stunned. What's this? What's the situation? Looking at the scene in front of him, Xueqi was stunned. Then he very cleverly turned his head to look at Lin Wei. Lin Wei's age was the oldest among the 4 leaders of An Hun's group. Of course, even the oldest, he was absolutely not over 30. Actually, Lin Wei was not much older than Xueqi and the other two. He was at most 2 or 3 years older, but the aura he displayed was quite mature. Among the 4 leaders of An Hun group, Lin Wei was the first to follow Ce. And Adam. Last was Xueqi. Therefore, Xueqi didn't know much about Emo-sen and Adam's background. Just as Xueqi turned his head to ask Lin Wei, before Lin Wei could reply, Adam took the initiative and said in a muffled voice, "He's my biological brother." So Emo-sen was usually very strict with Adam and especially meddled in Adam's affairs. Ce and Lin Wei obviously knew about this. Both of them didn't move an inch. Xueqi was dumbfounded. Yun Jian also stood up with furrowed eyebrows. Lan Su on the other side was also very surprised. Mo Sen was actually Adam's brother? But why did Mo Sen and Adam never address each other as brothers in front of others? Just as the few people present were thinking of this, Adam reached out and grabbed Lan Su, walking towards the door. Xueqi and Lin Wei saw this, and because they were worried about Mo Sen, they also followed out. So only Yun Jian and Ce were left in the hall. Yun Jian frowned slightly and looked at Ce. But after 2 seconds of silence, she didn't say anything. Chapter 11:01. As Ce's handsome face came closer and closer to hers, Yun Jian subconsciously nodded. To be honest, Yun Jian had never imagined that Mo Sen and Adam were biological brothers. Mo Sen and Adam didn't look alike, but if she thought about it carefully now that she knew the truth. Even if Mo Sen and Adam didn't look alike at first glance, each of them had their own handsome features. But there were still some details that made them look alike. Now that she heard Ce's words that sounded like a seduction, Yun Jian nodded subconsciously. Yun Jian nodded. Her tender cheeks looked very delicious. Ce couldn't help but swallow. His handsome face was already close to Yun Jian's cheek. His handsome lips were just a centimeter away from her right cheek. Give me a kiss and I'll tell you. Ce looked at Yun Jian's red lips that were moving up and down. His throat went dry and he took advantage of the situation to say these shameless words. As soon as Ce finished speaking, Yun Jian's face turned red. But her facial expression didn't change as usual. After hearing Ce's embarrassing words, Yun Jian's expression changed slightly. Then she reached out and pushed Ce's firm chest. Mom has already gone back to Uncle Ji's house. Let's hurry over too. Yun Jian said as she tried to push Ce away and stand up. Before she could stand up, Ce grabbed her slender waist and leaned his handsome face closer to hers. Almost at the same time, Ce moved closer to Yun Jian's red lips and quickly stole a kiss. Then he quickly let go of her. Yun Jian's cheeks flushed in no time. Let's go home. Ce reached out and grabbed Yun Jian's lily-white hand. Before Yun Jian could say anything, he pulled her towards the hotel's main entrance. Yun Jian didn't see that when Ce pulled her soft and smooth hand towards the entrance of Clear Rhythm Hotel, his lips curved up slightly. His handsome lips brushed up and down, as if he was licking the taste of her lips that had just touched the surface of the water. 8:30 p.m. Usually at this time, Qin Yiru would be sleeping with Xiao Yunju and the other two. But today was not normal. Today was Qin Yiru and Gu Yunjian's wedding. In Gu Yunjian's villa, Qin Yiru's relatives had already returned to Xinjiang town. Those who stayed were Gu Yunjian's friends and family, especially Gu Yunjian's comrades. They were all vowing to snatch the brides who had returned to their bridal chamber. There was an unwritten rule when people of Longmen City got married. On the night after the wedding ceremony, when the bride returned to her bridal chamber, the groom's relatives and friends could rush into the bridal chamber to snatch the bride and bridesmaids. Those who snatched the bride or bridesmaids out of the bridal chamber and carried them downstairs would receive a huge gift from the groom. Of course, it was not just those who snatched the bride and bridesmaids out of the bridal chamber. When the adults snatched the bride and bridesmaids out, the children could rush into the bridal chamber. As long as they carried a dowry pillow out, they would be rewarded with gifts such as cigarettes and a big bag of wedding candies. This was an unwritten game during weddings in Longmen City. Of course, some wealthy families might not like it. It was considered a game as well. At most, it was to join in the fun and have fun. It was also commonly known as nuptials. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.